Hi everyone, my name is Levi, and in this video I want to talk about Jupiter's transit through the sign of Sagittarius. And this will begin on November 8, 2018 at around 1:40 p.m. Central European Time, and it will leave the sign of Sagittarius on December 2nd, 2019. So we're going to have a good year of Jupiter transiting its own and Mula Trikona sign. Mula means root. All planets have a specific area in the zodiac where they draw their strength from. And for Jupiter, that is between the first 10 degrees of Sagittarius. Certain positions from a planet in Mula Trikona will determine whether a planet is friendly, inimical, or neutral towards that planet in Mula Trikona. So from the planets in Mula Trikona, natural friendships are determined. And natural friendships are a key component in determining the true dignity of a planet. And the true dignity of a planet shows a planet's capacity to give favorable or unfavorable results. So the higher the dignity of the planet, the more favorable it can produce. Okay, so if you want to quantify this on a scale of 60, then a planet in exaltation, which is the highest dignity a planet can be in, will produce 60 points of positive and 0 points of negative. A planet in Mula Trikona will produce 45 points of positive and 15 points of negative. A planet in own sign will give 30 points of positive, 30 points of negative. A planet in a great friend sign will give 22 points of positive and 48 points of negative. So you can see this scale drastically decreasing, right? So you want your planets in good dignity. Now, dignity is not the whole story. More important, in fact, are the Lagitadi Avastas. And Avasta means condition, right? The condition a planet can be in. Lagitadi Avastas are based on natural friendships, and they show the fulfillment of the planets. Okay, and I will illustrate this with an example. 2 years ago, Jupiter transited the sign of Libra. Libra is ruled by Venus, and Venus is inimical towards Jupiter. If we look at both planets' natures, right, they have some similarities. They're both Brahmins, so they have a strong knowledge connotation, right? Jupiter is, rules natural law. Jupiter is the guru, right, the teacher. It deals with moral and ethics, and it has a strong spiritual connotation. Venus is a worldly planet, right? If you look at the night sky, Venus is always the brightest, okay? The brightest planet. It relates to women, luxuries, vehicles, right? It's also the minister, right? The diplomat, wants to seal deals, create win-win situations. It's very much a worldly planet, fixed on, external things, we can say, much more than Jupiter. See, so their natures differ in that respect. So when Jupiter enters the sign of Libra, it has to, it's restricted because the signs are the containers, right? They limit a planet's consciousness. And in the sign of Libra, Jupiter feels restricted, right? Because it has to obey Venus's laws, we could say. So it doesn't have the freedom to express itself most naturally. See, so that's why we say Jupiter doesn't perform at its best in the sign of Libra, for example. And Taurus is the same thing. Then the year after, so last year, and we had Jupiter transiting the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by Mars, and Mars is a natural friend towards Jupiter, right? They're buddies. So Mars, of course, is the planet that wants to exert whatever is within your consciousness, okay? Mars is the general, always wants to obey the king. The king represents your creative spark, the thing that is, most essential, okay? Your core identity. Jupiter and the sun are also friends, right? Because, see, Jupiter, the sun, and the moon are all Sattvic planets, and Sattvic planets deal with the true nature, right? With our essence. And Mars wants to exert what is true, right? The good Mars has a lot of passion, has a lot of energy to exert whatever is within the sun, right? And Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, whenever, Mars aspects it. And when Jupiter enters Scorpio, it is there in the domain. Mars will fuel that Jupiter. And Jupiter also will pour wisdom into Mars's actions, we could say. See, so the dignity improved there. So as soon as Jupiter entered the sign of Scorpio, a lot of things came up, right? Remember all these scandals, manipulation stories, women being abused, all things came up, right? Scorpio being the original 8th sign of the zodiac, it's, you know, the 8th house is a hidden house, right? All this taboo, it all came up to be healed, right? So that Jupiter always wants to create more understanding. Now Jupiter transits its own sign and its Mula Trikona position there between the first 10 degrees, which makes it even stronger, and which is good. Jupiter is a manifesting planet. This is Gemini's second source of strength. So it's going to manifest all dual signs. Okay, so all dual signs will have the benefit of Jupiter's Rashi aspect for the whole year of 2019. So Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo. Now, having said that, first of all, I want to mention I co-authored a book with Carmina Amza, a Romanian astrologer and researcher, named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. This is a 210-page book thoroughly explaining the fundamentals of astrology, whether you're a Western astrologer or a Vedic astrologer. The book has 4 chapters: signs, planets, houses, and aspects. Okay, we include Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, the outer planets, and we, point out their intimate connection to the nodes, right? Rahu and Ketu, the north and south node of the moon. Rahu always shows where a person is in need of development. Ketu shows where we have created a security paradigm, where we suppress life energy as a consequence, and how these outer planets help to create breakthroughs on a level of identity, on a level of mind, and on a level of energy. Okay, we talk about the meanings of the houses, but also the relationship between the houses. Okay, which is Bhavat Bhavam, from the house, like the house. A lot of meaning is to be derived from that. There's many cross references to astronomy, anatomy, and psychology. We give some core challenges, advice. We apply a systematic approach, and it is a rational approach. If you're interested, you can find the book on Lada's website. There's going to be a page reserved there. And I'm going to use this text to elaborate on what Jupiter and Sagittarius represent according to these old Sanskrit astrological texts, which give, this is mainly coming from Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. I'm going to use some sutras as translated by Ernst Wilhelm. These sutras we took from Graha Sutras and also elaborated on them. So here I'm going to use these categories to explain Jupiter and Sagittarius to get a better understanding of what they represent, and we're going to mix those symbols. Okay, and after I will be going over what Jupiter's transit through Sagittarius may hold for all ascendant signs. And also importantly, look at the house cusps that fall in the sign of Sagittarius. So for example, if your 4th sign is Sagittarius, but the 3rd cusp falls in there, then also look at the explanation for the 3rd house as well. And you can find these cusps on Lada's birth chart calculator. So the house cusps represent the concrete aspect of a house, so it's important. So let's start with Jupiter. According to Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, Jupiter is large-bodied, yellow-haired and eyed, of Kapha nature, intelligent and proficient in all Shastras, which are the sacred texts. So large-bodied. After the Sun, Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. Of course, in astrology, we consider the Sun as a planet, right? Scientifically, Jupiter is nicknamed as the gas giant, right? And astronomically, it influences the Sun's orbit. So because of its gravitational pull, because of its weight, it pulls the Sun in a small orbit around itself. So these two planets are strongly connected. If we look at planetary friendships, the Sun and Jupiter are friends, right? When Jupiter looks at the Sun, aspects the Sun, conjuncts the Sun, it's going to pour its wisdom into the Sun's creative vision. If the Sun planetary aspects Jupiter, is going to create consistency in expressing wisdom and joy. Okay, when the Sun conjuncts Jupiter, is going to agitate it, though, and if it's really close to Jupiter, it's going to combust Jupiter because it's going to be too hot and it can create some problems. But on the other hand, Jupiter will delight that Sun. So they're friends. They really have a positive. Also, when they're conjuncting, like when the Sun agitates or combusts even, there's a purification process going on in respect to what Jupiter represents, right? In respect to your children, in respect to the husband, in respect to your belief systems, and so on, okay? So large-bodied is Jupiter. It's yellow-haired and eyed. In the Sutra of the Sun, describing the Sun, it is said that the Sun is honey yellow-eyed. So yellow here, I think, connects to a certain sense of optimism, a certain sense of clairvoyance about how to follow the path, right? The path of Dharma. Jupiter is of Kapha nature. It's one of the three male planets together with the Sun and Mars. And the Sun and Mars are both of Pitta nature. So Pitta, Vata, Kapha are the three humors, right? And the three doshas. Pitta is action, Kapha is passivity, and Vata is movement, right? The movement between Pitta and Kapha. So Jupiter has that quality of being a little more passive sometimes, which is good, right? It's good to be passive when it's needed. The Sun and Mars are Pitta, right? They're dry Pitta male planets who can't really relax too much, we could say, right? They always want to do something. The Sun always wants to create its vision. Mars always wants to, exert whatever the king, the Sun, wants to have done, right? And so Jupiter is intelligent. Okay, one of the names of Jupiter is Guru. Guru means heavy, right? It translates as heavy. Of course, Jupiter is heavy in knowledge. It's intelligence because Guru also means teacher, right? The Guru is a teacher, and it's proficient in all shastras. So it has a spiritual connotation. One of the names for Jupiter is also Brihaspati, which means the Lord of prayer, which has a spiritual connotation, and also a mantra. Mantra are the hymns that are used for spiritual and psychological powers. Okay. Jupiter is also rules the vocal cords. The vocal cords and sound. The element connected to Jupiter is ether, right? And sound travels through ether. I think Ken Rowe mentioned this, that people who study classical music, for example, in some way, Jupiter is also strongly involved with career factors and so on, or history, for example, well, things that are old, and Jupiter is strongly connected to that. But it rules vocal cords and sound as well. It's also the Lord of eloquence, and also if you look at Gemini, the fifth position from the Atmakaraka, right? For example, in the Navamsha, the fifth from the Swamsha, gives a talent for grammar, or in the Rashi chart, even in the natal horoscope, gives a talent for grammar. If you have Jupiter in the second house, conjunct Ketu, for example, it can give a talent with language. Okay, languages. Ketu also connects to language. So this is some information about Jupiter. Okay, there's some other sutras here. I won't go over all of it. Let's go to the next category, which is the numerical manifestation. Jupiter is the fifth planet. It's connected to overcoming adversities. If you see the truth of the matter, right? If you follow your dharma, if you follow who you truly are, you can develop a perception which enables you to overcome adversities, because you see the truth of the matter, right? You're much more equipped to overcome problems when they present themselves, right? A good Jupiter always helps and protects in that manner, right? One of the names of Jupiter is Jiva, which means enlivening or living, which means, it has this protective influence. It is connected to grace, Jupiter, right? It's the merit we accumulated over because of doing right karma, right? Doing right action comes back to us in a form of grace, right? It's like good luck happens, but it's all karma, right? Action, right? A chain of actions. Okay, Jupiter is also a Samya, or a gentle planet. Or in Western astrology referred to as a benefic. Okay, so benefics are much more about comforting or offering support and so on. No, the malefic planets, the cruel planets, can also give things, but they're not about comforting at all. So both gentle and cruel can give and take, right? But the gentle planets will do it in a more gentle and comforting way, we can say. The cruel planets like Sun, Mars, Saturn, Rahu, Ketu, when they give, they always require more work. There's going to be a malefic influence to it, and when they create problems, it's always going to be a little more painful. Now, if the gentle planets take things away, for example, when you get robbed by a beautiful woman, which is Venus, right? It's a gentle planet. It can take things away, but it's going to be less cruel, we could say, compared to when you get robbed by, some maniac, aggressive criminal, right? So you can look at it like that. But Jupiter is a gentle planet, right? It's a male planet, a masculine planet. The Sun and Mars are, also male planets, but they're cruel. Okay, so Jupiter is inclined to actively put forward teachings and share its wisdom, because all male planets want to do something, right? They're action oriented, and so Jupiter is going to have that quality of comforting as well, which is not really the case with the Sun and Mars, right? They're dry planets. They want to get the job done, right? The Sun wants to create, create its vision, create its kingdom. Mars is following the orders of the king and just gets involved when something needs to be done. Then, goes back into solitude, right? Mars is the bachelor, and so on. So that is another category. Jupiter is a Brahmin, as I mentioned in the introduction, together with Venus. They're on the path of knowledge. Okay, so Jupiter is, as a Brahmin graha, makes the moral judgment of what is right and wrong, right? It connects to ethics and moral and so on, right? Jupiter is the guru, as I mentioned. It's a spiritual teacher and one who guides and supports the way to spiritual liberation by following dharma, right? Dharma means nature. Following your natural inclination gives you the power, gives you the joy to live life in a balanced manner, right? And to overcome adversity. It's a Sattvic planet. Sattvic planets deal with the true nature of the self, right? Together with the Sun and Moon, which, right? Jupiter, Sun, and Moon are the three Sattvic planets. The Sun, our soul, right? The Moon, the mind, the reflection of the soul. And Jupiter is the planet of wisdom and balanced perspective, right? Spirituality. It points us to the path, the right path, right? Which means following who we truly are, okay? Not being too blinded by things that don't really matter too much, right? And as it's also Jiva, which is living or enlivening, yes? It has a joyous wisdom, right? It's always when Jupiter knows the purpose of life, and as a consequence, it feels happy, right? Because it expresses who it is, and not because of some compensation, right? Which is indicated by Saturn. We all have Saturn somewhere, right? We also always have Ketu somewhere, which shows where we, feel not perfect, right? We're always looking for perfection, but we can't find it there, right? We have Saturn, which rules our complexes and, our body identification, right? Our mortality. So Jupiter gives, a good Jupiter gives the strength and wisdom to see the truth of the matter and go through life with a sense of optimism, right? And as the ruler of Sagittarius, Jupiter has a broader vision and is focused on higher principles, right? Sagittarius is a Kshatriya sign, a fire sign. It's a male sign, so it's very much about action. And Sagittarius is symbolized by a man on a horse with a bow, right? And shooting its arrow, which has long-term ramifications, and so which has the goal to overcome problems, right? Which are indicated by Capricorn and Aquarius, right? Which are the two signs ruled by Saturn. So in Sagittarius, Jupiter is very strong. It sees the truth of the matter. It sees what path to follow, which is the path of Dharma, and then shoots its arrow onto the sign of Pisces, right? Where it can find true liberation. Okay, it rules the fats in the body. The taste connected to Jupiter is sweet, right? Connected to the ether element, as I mentioned. Jupiter is also a counselor together with Venus, so there's quite some similarities between Jupiter and Venus. Jupiter is the sage that does not speak much, but its words are heavy with meaning. Okay, it's compared to Venus, which is a Rajasic Brahmin. Jupiter is a Sattvic Brahmin. Rajas again means mist. Rajas connects to one of the three gunas with passion, right? The gunas are Sattva, Rajas, and Tamasic are the three qualities in nature. So it's our motivation. Why do we get involved with certain things? Right, it's because of a certain motivation. The Sattvic motivation is a motivation because we follow that thing because of who we truly are, right? A Rajasic motivation is to avoid suffering, right? If you need to follow a diet or something, it's not really coming from yourself, but it's like something obligated, you need to do it. It's like a Rajasic motivation because you want to avoid suffering, right? Which is also important, of course. And a Rajasic motivation means there's passion involved, right? You're very passionate to do something. Okay, so Venus is a Rajasic Brahman, right? It has that worldly, passionate quality. It has a desire connotation as well. A desire in the sense that on a worldly level, right? Jupiter is less like that. Jupiter is a sattvic planet. It deals with our true, the essence of our being. See, it's not really concerned with that, with the outer world too much. Okay. Jupiter is also a biped, another quality it shares with Venus, right? The two Brahmins and counselors are also bipeds, and bipeds are, the humans, right? Human form, and humans are known to be the longest distance land dwellers. So this connects to having a long-term vision. Jupiter offers knowledge and wisdom through philosophy, psychology, and spiritual practice, but it's not a planet of fulfilling short-term desires, right? It's not that Rajasic thing, a Rajasic planet. It's a sattvic planet. So it sets its ideals and can only be accomplished over a longer period of time. Okay, so again, sattva, right, which also has a dharmic. Jupiter is connected to dharma. It points the way to dharma and eventually liberation. Right. So any planet that if you look at your horoscope and you see where Jupiter is, that sign, right, and whatever contains that sign is, being. You're going to find understanding there. You're going to go into that Rashi because you understand things. You want to, these things are going to be growing, manifesting, right? Even if Jupiter is in a bad dignity in your natal horoscope, never forget that there's a lot of, that we have the harmonic charts or the divisional charts, right? Which shows the specific areas in a person's life. And so Jupiter can there be in a good dignity, for example. You can have, for example, if someone has the moon debilitated in Scorpio, in the first 3 degrees of Scorpio, the moon is debilitated, it will always be in its own sign in the Navamsha, for example, right? Which is the path, which is the ashram you belong to, which is your purpose in life, right? So never judge it just by looking at the Rashi chart or the natal horoscope. Then another quality of Jupiter is that its direction of gaze is it looks everywhere equally. Okay, so the Sun and Mars, for example, they always look up. They always want to do, or they're always on to the next thing. The Sun creating its vision, right? Its kingdom, as I mentioned. Mars exerting whatever is in there to follow the spark of inspiration and to, act on that. Jupiter is looking everywhere equally. Again, it has this balanced perspective. For example, Saturn looks down, right? Always looks down. He always sees the negative. Rahu is also like that. Jupiter looks everywhere equally together with the moon. And so it can see, it looks at things objectively, and from there it can, it takes the best option and runs with that, with the best option. So it has this balanced perspective, okay? Then the brightness, the sun and the moon are the two luminaries, right? They deal with our being, our true being. And the sun, the Atma, right? The soul. The moon represents the mind, the reflection of the soul. The Rahu and Ketu, the south and the north node of the moon, are dark grahas. They are all about our subconscious shadow, our shadow side, okay? And all the other planets are Tara or starry planets, which are about developing our capacity or capabilities, okay? So Jupiter represents the part in us that is wise, joyful, and understanding because it envisions the greater scheme of things. And also the part that wants to expand in knowledge. The tools Jupiter uses are optimism, right? Spirituality, wisdom, and joy. Jupiter is also a moist planet together with Mercury, right? Which is interesting because the two moist planets are also the two manifesting planets. The Sun and Mars are the two dry planets, okay? They are they're about rationale, objectively looking at things, not comforting at all, right? Wet planets, Venus and Moon, are all about comforting and soothing. Jupiter is, again, has both qualities, again, that balanced perspective. See, so moist soil is also known to be the most fertile and life-bearing. That is why Jupiter is connected to abundance, children, and wealth, right? It's the karaka, or the significator, for all these things. And it is a manifesting planet, right? Mercury and Jupiter are two manifesting grahas, applying Gemini second source of strength. So if you look, so Jupiter is manifesting Sagittarius, right? But because it's going to transit for a whole year the sign of Sagittarius, and by Rashi aspect, it's going to influence all the dual signs, right? Pisces, Virgo, and Gemini. So they're going to benefit from this, and of course, because it's in a great dignity, it's going to be giving more. Okay, which is great news for the sign of Sagittarius, and everybody has a Sagittarius in their horoscope, right? Now let's move on with the sign of Sagittarius. According to Brihat Parashara Horashastra, back rising is the bow, owned by Jupiter. Sattvic, yellow, vigorous at night, fiery, a kshatriya. Two-footed at the beginning, four-footed at the end. Regular limbs, bearing a bow, standing in the east, moving on the ground, and made splendid by Brahma. Sagittarius is represented by a man on a horse carrying a bow. It's owned by Jupiter, right? Jupiter is the lord of Sagittarius. Now let's look at the body parts. So the signs in astrology represent body parts, right? So because the signs are considered the limbs of Vishnu, right? Vishnu is the lord of all manifestation. So the signs, are the containers to limit a planet's expression, right? Its consciousness. They condition it in a certain way. That's why Jupiter is in a good dignity, because the container it has in its own sign is one that gives it a lot of expression, freedom to express itself, right? That's why, because their symbolisms inherently match. Okay, so Jupiter and whatever Jupiter represents can come to expression in full potential and with great potential in the sign of Sagittarius. So the body part is the buttocks. So, and more specifically, the gluteal muscles, which are the largest in the body, and which enable the body to move from walking to running. Okay, and this is connected to long distances, so it makes it possible for humans to cover long distances, which connects to endurance and long-term planning. Okay, Sagittarius is that sign, that kshatriya. Kshatriya means a warrior sign. It's a fire sign where the soul shoots its arrow, which has long-term ramifications. What is that all about? It is following the path of Dharma, realizing the truth of the matter, right? In Scorpio, the original 8th sign of the zodiac, which deals with our weaknesses. In Scorpio, we find our shadow. We overcome it, right? We become emotionally mature. And in Sagittarius, we have this vision. We have the fire, Jupiter, because Sagittarius is also a Pitta Rashi. It's a fire Rashi. And Sagittarius, Jupiter is, powered and juiced to actually pursue the path of Dharma, which is the natural way. And we also say the path of Dharma, which is our true purpose. Now, what is our purpose? See, the sun represents the soul, the Atma, okay? The Atma is a unique part of the supreme consciousness, which is represented by Brahma, okay? And which represents the potential for consciousness. The Atma is an individual spark, an individual entity. We all have an Atma. The sun represents that in the horoscope, right? And we're all connected to the Para Atma, okay, which connects all Atmas, okay? So we're a ray coming out of the Paratma. That is important to consider, is that we are souls that create things. So we have the Atma has the power has the power to create things, which is karma. Karma is its power to create things, right? And the Atma also creates the ego, right? That's the moon represents the mind, and in the mind lives the idea of separate existence, which is the ego. And so we have the ability to create things, and we need an ego to create things. It's all coming from the Atma. But sometimes we get carried away with, or the ego gets carried away, you could say, and we identify with the ego. And that gets us into trouble, right? Because karma is always a chain of actions and reactions. And so the fruits of our karma, right, karma phala, is something to become aware of, is what ramifications our actions have. And in Sagittarius, there's a potential, right? Because we are aligned to who we truly are. This is a sattvic sign, and Jupiter, a sattvic planet coming in there, gives us the opportunity to realign, we'd say, with what we truly want. And especially in the end, it's always coming back to the sun, which is the soul, right? Because this is the creative spark, the thing that initiates the whole thing, right? Which is always there, which doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end. And so it is truly the creative self. Okay, so in the buttocks, so in that sense, long-term planning. So we find a way to realign ourselves with what the soul is actually wanting to experience. Okay, and we have the free will. Okay, so that is the important thing. Karma means also free will, the power, right, to change your destiny, and which is free will, right, which is our karma. So we can change anytime. Sometimes it's difficult because we have been doing certain things for such a long time that do not make us happy, but in the end we will realign, and Jupiter in Sagittarius will help us with realigning with what is truly important, and to step away from actions that are not really helping us to be truthful and become happy, right? Because happiness is considered, or is a very natural thing to consciousness, to experience consciousness, is the mere joy of experiencing of being alive. Yes. So it designates the tailbone, which is also, it needs which symbolically shows a need for balance. So balancing all these things out. Okay, then some extra information. There's no planets exalted or debilitated in Sagittarius, right? Most mula trikonas of planets are happening in male signs, right? Except for the Moon and Venus. The Moon has it in Taurus, Moon and Mercury. Mercury has it in Virgo. Okay, again, so it's a Kshatriya sign, a fire sign, a warrior sign. Jupiter has the juice, the vigor to pursue, right? It's action-oriented because it's also a male sign. To pursue its broader vision. Vision, again, is the sun, which has that inspiration. Then the modality. See, modality is determined by how the sun moves through the signs. So the movable signs, right, they show a change of seasons. Like Aries is spring, right? Cancer is summer. Then Libra, autumn, and then Capricorn is winter. So they show the change of seasons. So they're movable. They're changeable. Movable signs are radical signs. So so Aries, right, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn are about radical change. So if Capricorn, for example, or any movable sign is your 10th house, for example, and there's no fixed planets in there like the sun, then that area in your life, career, and this kind of thing will have drastic changes. The fixed signs are all about maintaining the course. They're all about finding security, right? So the season has its momentum, has its time. And then you arrive at the dual signs. The first part of a dual sign is still fixed, and then the last part is movable. So it has two qualities. It has a quality of movable and fixed. That's why it's dual, right? So, and the dual signs announce a change of seasons. Okay, so Virgo, Gemini, Sagittarius, and Pisces announce a change of seasons. So they're not so much about radical change. They're about developing things, improving on things. So they go about things. They can change things as they go along. See, so they're not really that much about radical change like the movable signs are. So As a dual sign, Sagittarius is eager to learn, right? Develop and express their own inspiration, because it's a fire sign, which is very much about self-expression. So, right, own expression, and inspiration is also connected to fire. Sagittarius is a, is a sign that wants to improve on how they themselves can make their inspired ideas matter in the world. It's an cruel Rashi, so all odd signs are the male signs. So Aries, Gemini, what is it, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, and Aquarius are all odd signs, so they are the cruel signs. And they're also the male signs, they're kind of synonyms, but there's some subtle things to mention. So it will act according to its instinctive intuition. Again, this intuition quality comes up, but Sagittarius wants to really do something, right? It's fired up to really shoot that arrow. Now, when it's afflicted, it may become dogmatic and fight crusades and holy wars. These are, can be things that are based. Sometimes when Sagittarius gets afflicted, they have a certain perception about things can be based on a belief that is simply wrong, right? And we know this can have long-term ramifications that are very negative. Okay, so that's the downfall of Sagittarius. Of course, it can be very dogmatic. It's a male sign. Okay, all male signs are action-oriented, so it is geared towards ideals, philosophy, spirituality, and higher learning. It's also a Sattvic sign. Jupiter is a Sattvic planet, right? So we have a Sattvic planet and a Sattvic sign, which is great. So it falls, Jupiter represents moral, right, and law, natural law. So here it's very strongly connected to moral principles and pertaining to wisdom and virtue. It's also a Pitta Rashi, which again has this action element in the fire and the Kshatriya, as I mentioned. So also interesting, if you look at the fire signs, Sagittarius is the most mature of the fire signs. Aries represents that young warrior that doesn't really think too much about the consequences. That's its nature, right? It's that initial spark. Aries is symbolized by, this one and has two little, curls coming out of it. So from one, something comes into duality, something happens, there's an action. Leo is the leader who maintains and protects its kingdom, right? It becomes more mature, and Sagittarius represents the seasoned warrior, right? Which is also Sattvic by nature. All fire signs represent the east, right? The direction connected to fire signs is the east. Then there's also a category, the feet of the Rashi, right? We know that Jupiter is a biped, and Sagittarius is and the first part of Sagittarius is a biped, which is a man represented by a man carrying the bow, right? And the latter part is a horse, which is a quadruped. So bipeds are always about self-expression and being adaptable. And the quadruped, an animal standing on four legs is able to carry great burdens through hard work. So it also has that quality. The size is medium, so all dual signs have medium size. Okay, so this can be interesting to look at in terms of the body build of a person, how the body is built. And then the creature in residence is Sagittarius is seen as a man on a horse carrying a bow, right? Moving on the ground. This warrior sign holds ethics high as its primary motivation. The bow denotes that its actions are targeted and will have long-term ramifications, right? When Sagittarius Rashi is supported, it will be determined in pursuing its goals in a focused and wise manner. When Sagittarius is afflicted, we may find cases of religious fanaticism and dogmatic beliefs, right? Which we already touched on. The color connected, and this is suggested by Ernst Wilhelm, the modern color theory is connected to the color red. And Sagittarius represents a battlefields, training grounds, army facilities. Okay, so we can see there's a lot of overlap, right? We see why Jupiter does so well in the sign of Sagittarius. And now let's see what the transit of Jupiter through Sagittarius may hold for all ascendant signs. So let's start with Aries. For Aries ascendant, Jupiter's transit through Sagittarius will happen in their 9th house. What is the 9th house? The 9th house is the strongest of the Dharma houses. Dharma means nature. So Jupiter, a Sattvic planet, which deals with your true nature, is going to enter its own domain, which is a sattvic sign as well. So Aries is going to be realigned or aligned with their true purpose. Sagittarius is a kshatriya sign, a warrior sign, a fire sign, a male sign. So it wants to do something. It's a pitta sign. It's very action-oriented. It wants to shoot its arrow, which has long-term ramifications, right? So aligning yourself with your soul, with what you're here to do, is a promise during this transit, right? Meaning there's a great potential to follow that course and to truly shoot that arrow. Because if we look at your 10th house for Aries Ascendant, it's very intense. So at the time of the transit, okay, the day before, there's going to be a new moon in Scorpio in their 8th house. And 2 days before, on the 6th, the nodes will shift signs. So Rahu, the north node, is shifting into Cancer, and Ketu into Capricorn. Right? So the eclipses are going to happen there for the coming time in their 4th house and their 10th house. Now, I was talking about the 10th house. So remember here, you have all this inspiration going on. Okay, so the 9th house connects to pilgrimages, travel that inspires you, higher learning, all these connotations. Now, the 10th house is the house of your occupation, career, and so on. So it's just intense placement in your horoscope, because Saturn, the planet of hardship and hard work, is transiting it. It's in its own sign, so it's going to give good results, right? We also see Pluto here, so Saturn is coming closer to Pluto. Pluto is, of course, the ego basher, right? It relates to Shiva in Vedic thinking. So Shiva, the ego destroyer. So whatever, see, Pluto is not to something to be afraid of. It's just Pluto doesn't let you go with it. If it's time to let the thing go that doesn't really support you any longer, then Pluto is going to make sure that it gets destroyed. And the south node entering, right, is going to be for the next 18 months, shows completions, right? Rahu, the north node, shows where we are in need of development. For Aries Ascendant, this is happening in their 4th house. So investing in new feelings, so looking for a new feelings, because Cancer is a water sign which is feeling oriented. It's a Brahmin sign which also deals with our true nature, right? All water signs do. Rahu shows that is where we need to develop. So Rahu is going to push us out of our comfort zone by tricking us into certain situations, which is the 4th house here. It can relate to home. Cancer is, of course, the sign of foreign countries. It can relate to your inner peace, right? Rahu there can create some turmoil because it wants to push us out of our comfort zone to evolve our consciousness. On the other side here, we have Ketu. Also, Ketu shows where we have a security paradigm, where we suppress life energy as a consequence, right? Because we fall back on Ketu, but then we get dissatisfied by it, because Rahu indicates that there's a need to balance these areas in life out. So this is happening between the 4th and the 10th house, and this 10th house is packed with malefic planets, right? These are all cruel influences. Saturn, right? Strong, but the planet of your psychological complexes. Pluto there in the 10th house, the 10th relating to authority figures, your occupation, your persona, how you are seen in the world. It's all under review, we can say. It's going to be bashing there, right? So whatever inauthenticities that are sticking on you, they're going to be smashed, especially when you have Saturn and Pluto coming closer. The south node showing completions in respect to that. Okay, so definitely this 10th house, right? Your persona, your status, your occupation, what you're here to do. This is the house, the karma house, right? The karma bhava. Karma means action, bhava means house, something concrete. Bhava means so. This Jupiter here is going to fuel that. Okay, it's going to transfer its energy to this 4th house here, which is how can I become emotionally satisfied? How can I feel that my life has meaning, which is very strongly Cancer in the 4th house, is feeling at peace. Cancer is the Brahmin sign. Who am I? What do I need to feel fulfilled in my home, right? The 4th house relates to the external home, the physical home, but also the internal place of where your heart resides, right, in the sign of Cancer. So there's a strong Plutonian influence here on the 10th house, so this is under review, so this is changing. Okay, so Jupiter is a great transit to have for Aries Ascendant, of course, because it's realigning with your life path, with your purpose. The 9th house is the house of purpose, and of course Sagittarius pointing, right, showing this arrow here, shooting its arrow to become closer to what you truly are and to express that. There's going to be a new moon in the 8th house for Aries in Scorpio. So we have the day before, Jupiter will be still transiting Scorpio. So we have the 3 sattvic planets, Sun, Moon, and Jupiter in the sign of Scorpio. So it's like, you know, really letting go. It's like this new moon is going to show, indicates a new cycle of you know, illuminating psychological vulnerabilities, emotional vulnerabilities, which is also connected to Scorpio. Of course, the 8th house also connects to other people's resources, intimacy. In fact, it's the house of life force, right? Our vitality. Intimacy is important also for the 8th house. So there's new moon happening there, and then Jupiter entering the sign of Sagittarius. So it's a big beginning, new beginning, right? The nodes, the new moon, and Jupiter there. So this 10th house here under serious pressure. So whatever this pressure, it's putting the focus there, right? So, and to make the energy in the chart move, to make your life move, to make your consciousness move, okay? Mars is still in your 11th house of groups, social networks, and so on. So there's some drive here. There were eclipses have been happening here in the 5th, 11th axis for Aries, right, in the past couple of years. So Neptune here in the 12th house, trining the sun, which is nice. It has that spiritual dimension to it. Because it's pouring, it's connecting here with the 8th house, right? So it's going to be a transformational time, and then, you know, a time to celebrate, right? If you have Jupiter in its own sign and Mula Trikona in the first 10 degrees here in your 9th house, then that gives opportunities. Mercury is also as a second manifesting influence. For a couple of weeks, there's going to be 2 manifesting influences on to your 9th house, so see it coming to fruition. Well, it's going to be for the whole year because Jupiter will fulfill this. But whenever Mercury enters or transits Sagittarius, Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo, there's going to be 2 manifesting influences onto all these signs. So it's going to manifest for you. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you. For Taurus Ascendant, Jupiter will be transiting their 8th house. What is the 8th house? Most importantly, the 8th house is the house of our vitality, okay? It's the house of life force. It is a hidden house. It's a moksha house. Moksha means liberation. So it's where we get away from the troubles of the world, but it's where we work the ego. Okay, the 8th house is one of the Dushtana houses, one of the difficult houses. Jupiter, a sattvic planet, which is all about the truth of the matter, will enter a sattvic sign, right? Its own sign of Sagittarius, which is also sattvic. Sattva is, you know, why do we get into it? Because of who we truly are. So this is nice. The 8th house is the house of transformation, transmuting weaknesses, right? It's the house of weaknesses, in fact. So a lot of manifesting influence, a lot of knowledge and understanding and respect to it, all those things, working your ego, where you are, what are your sensitivities? This is, you know, talking on a psychological level. Where are your weaknesses? Jupiter in a Kshatriya sign, in a warrior sign of Sagittarius, in a fire sign, will have the vigor, right? The juice to overcome adversities, problems very strongly, okay? The 8th house is also the house of other people's resources, other people's money, like refunds and tax refunds and or inheritances and this kind of thing. So on a material level, because the 8th house has also a material connotation, right? Other people's resources, things can come to you. Good luck, right? Jupiter, the planet of good luck and wealth, can create there. It's going to be very manifesting in its own sign. It planets in their own signs always are. Mercury is also there for the first couple of weeks, two manifesting influences. So Mercury is also starving Jupiter, because Mercury looks at Jupiter as inimical, right? It looks at Jupiter as an enemy. So it's going to starve Jupiter a little bit, but Jupiter is so strong there in its Mula Trikona that it's not going to be hampered too much. So, but you're going to have two manifesting influences there. So your 8th house is under manifesting influence. So things will come to you. It can be in terms of psychology. Okay, so Jupiter is shedding, giving, understanding. It's this highly creative. So maybe you can have these sudden insight, right? The 8th house is sudden changes, sudden windfalls, sudden epiphanies in how to move forward with your life, which is Sagittarius, right? Which is this arrow here. It points its arrow into a direction, in a direction that it can really align with, that it feels truthfully connected with. And so this is a positive transit. Now, whenever Mercury transits Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo, there's going to be two manifesting influences onto all these signs. So all these signs will come to fruition for you, but Jupiter in its own sign is going to be more powerful, right? Because the planets in the signs are always, give always a little more. So that is what is happening. So the 8th house is also the house of battles, all right? It's the 3rd from the 6th, right? The 3rd is competition, the 6th is your enemies. So we say the 3rd from the 6th is the 8th house, which is battles. So it has this force, a spiritual connotation, an occult connotation, right? It's the house of all occult practices, ceremonial practices. Okay, so Jupiter, of course, the planet of learning, teachers, right? Sagittarius is a sign of a Sattvic sign, so a fire sign, which connects to teaching and leadership, and so learning new things, occult matters. Also, the 8th relates to corporations, so starting a new corporation, for example, which is again relates to other people's money. So a lot of manifesting influence, a lot of potential there in the coming year for a Taurus ascendant. Now, at the day before Jupiter transits Sagittarius, we're going to have a new moon in Scorpio. So for Taurus, that's in their 7th house. So new beginnings in terms of relationships, partnerships. The 7th also relates to sex, right? Intercourse, conception, long distance travel, and so on. So the 7th house is the furthest away, right? It's a Kama house, which Kama means, connects to desire, right? Following your desires, right? Which is the 7th house. It's your partnerships, and so it can also connect to trade. So new beginnings in respect to that. The day before, we're going to have 3 Sattvic planets: the Moon, Sun, and Jupiter. Right? It's going to still be in Scorpio on that day. 3 Sattvic planets, which again deal with the true nature, highlighting the 7th house here. Right? We have Venus. Still retrogrades for some time. I think it's going to be another week retrograde in its own sign, also manifesting. So there's a lot of manifesting potential if we take a snapshot of this sky here, right? Venus in its own sign. We have Jupiter transiting on the 8th, its own sign for a whole year. We also see that, and I was going to mention, Venus is also a karaka or significator for relationships. So this is, relationship being under review here in the 6th house, right? But new beginnings here also. So it's strongly relationship centered here also for Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. So the ascendant lord here is in the 6th house. Also overcoming some adversity, overcoming some enemies, some problems perhaps. And Venus as a karaka, significator of relationships, this can be connected to that. But you also see a nice trine here with Mars. So Mars is the hunger, Venus is soothing that hunger. So this could be a nice combination for, juicing things up, right? So there's also a nice trine between Neptune and the Sun here in this new moon, which is, Neptune spiritualizes things. Neptune wants to create breakthroughs on the level of mind. It's connected to the moon, right, which represents the mind. And here in trine with the Sun is going to fuel that Sun, right? New beginnings. And the Sun is here, of course, giving, shining a light, right? So illuminating the 7th house in Scorpio, which is always, for Taurus, an intense sign. Okay, Taurus, it's a fixed sign, but they go deep, right? Taurus and Scorpio, both fixed signs. Scorpio, the original 8th sign of sudden breaks transformation and becoming psychologically, emotionally mature through relationships. But here there's a nice spiritualizing aspect to it, okay, from Neptune. Now, the 9th house for Taurus is under serious stress, right? We see Pluto here. The ego basher connects to Shiva, right, in Vedic thinking. Saturn is, of course, the planet of hardship, the planet of our complexes, the planet of hard work and resisting pains, right? Saturn is a planet of endurance also. So it's manifesting in its own sign of Capricorn, right? Any planet that conjuncts its own sign becomes manifesting to that sign. This is applying Gemini's second source of strength, right? So it gives good results, right? Saturn in its own sign can give good results, but it comes closer and closer to Pluto. Pluto, of course, you know, whatever inauthenticities that may, you know, stick on you are going to be slowly but surely, you know, be removed by Pluto. Pluto is the one that destroys the underlying structure and wants to create a new platform, right? Uranus is the planet that creates breakthroughs on a level of, you know, identity. So it brings in new things. It brings in the light of the soul, we say. So it brings in new inspiration, new ways of filling whatever Pluto has been destroying, because it doesn't help the soul anymore to evolve, right? Sometimes it can be painful, especially when the ego is not prepared, or when people are too stuck into certain rats, right? It can be very painful. But Pluto wants authenticity. It wants to bring out, it wants to illuminate, it wants to help the soul expressing itself, right? It's happening here in the 9th house, right? So we have in respect to your belief systems, in respect to teachers, you know, the 9th house is very strongly that belief system, right? It's the house of law, of religious law also, of marriage, right? The 9th house relates to marriage, the institution of marriage, parents, teachers, good luck also, right? Your fortune. Also, you know, these are areas in life that are a little bit under stress. Now, well, strongly under stress, because the South Node, and that's also what is happening, the nodes are shifting signs. So Rahu and Ketu shift from Leo, Aquarius to Cancer, Capricorn. Okay, so for Taurus Ascendant, it's going to be in their 3rd, 9th axis here. So I was talking about this 9th house being under stress, okay, manifesting stress. So it's going to manifest, but nonetheless stress. Now Ketu is going to enter there, and Ketu shows where we need to complete things, right? It shows endings. It indicates endings. A Rahu is where a person is in need of development, right? Rahu wants to push us out of our comfort zone, to evolve our consciousness. Ketu shows where we suppress life energy, where we are capable, but where we need to let go of things, where we should not identify too strongly, because it's not really helping us move forward, right? This is what Rahu indicates, where we need to move forward. But Rahu indicates where we are in need of development. So we kind of fail there initially because we don't really know how to go about it. So it can be chaotic factors. How can I reach my goal, for example, right? Which here for Taurus Ascendant is happening in their 3rd house, which relates to Cancer. Cancer is, well, Cancer is that 3rd house. Cancer is a Brahman sign, so which is about the true self as well, okay? And knowledge and understanding, contemplation. But the 3rd house, to make it a little more concrete, deals with our developing our skills, right? It's Upadesa, learning the ABC, learning a new language. It relates to performing arts, commerce. You know, also deprivation of parents is connected to the 3rd house. The 3rd house is you're using your will, your rationale, and your, you know, willpower to make things happen, right? It's where we develop our skills in the 3rd house, and we learn, you know, and that's difficult, right? The 3rd also relates to siblings and so on. So Rahu is going to create some, it's going to bring to focus, or it's going to make Taurus Ascendant aware of the fact that these areas are under development. They should be focused on, right? And of course, if you look at Cancer, Cancer is always where you know, Rahu in Cancer always indicates investing in a new feeling. you know, finding your truth, because it's a Brahmin sign, right? These Brahmin signs are very much about contemplating and finding out what you need to feel fulfilled on an emotional level. Cancer, of course, relates to the heart, right? It's the original fourth sign of the zodiac. And so we have this stress here going on. It's completions in the ninth. What is my belief? What is my dharma, right? The ninth house is the strongest of the dharma houses, where you have all these planets here for Taurus Ascendant in their ninth house. So what is my path here? So what is to let go of that, okay? Of what is no longer serving me, let go of some certain belief system, a teacher, a philosophical system, something that doesn't really help me any further, or there's some ego bashing going on with Pluto there, right? Doesn't really align with who I am, or maybe I am under serious review in the way I think about certain things, right? Which is definitely indicated here by this conjunction. A Capricorn, of course, is the original 10th sign. It can always relate to your persona, okay? So how do the world sees you, how you want to project yourself in the world. Capricorn always relates to status, right? And your occupation, this kind of thing. So it can also have a deeper underlying connotation, right? The sign is always deeper than the house. The house is a gateway to the sign, right? Okay, this is because the signs are unconscious, and so the houses represent the concrete things. So a lot of intensity in respect to belief system, but here we see the transformation is supported, right? See, there's always so many things going on. Jupiter is always somewhere, but Jupiter is strong now. It's going to be in your 8th house of working the ego. It's going to really help to figure out whatever is needed to be transformed and to find the power, the strength to realign with who you truly are, right? Which is important. The belief system is important, whatever system it also is. See, the 9th house is the house of everything that is greater than yourself. Like if you believe in anything like God, or if you don't believe, that's also a belief system. It's something that, you know, is where you're fueling, where you find your fuel. And so Jupiter through the 8th house of transformation, right? Sudden changes is going to help that, okay? Mars is still for Taurus Ascendant in their 10th house, which relates to their occupation, their career, their, you know, the 10th house is the Karma Bhava. Karma means action. So eclipses have been going on for Taurus in their 4th 10th axis, which is a very intense placement because it's one of the cardinal points, right? It's all cardinal points here. The 1st, the 4th, the 7th, right, are the foundations of this chart. So the last, 18 months have been very intense with these eclipses happening here in terms of respect to their emotions, their home, also in terms of their career, what they want to express in the world, and so on. Okay, so now this is changing. The axes are changing to the 3rd, 9th axis. Okay, Uranus is also going to transit Taurus. It's already been there, retrograde. It's going to go back in. So you can expect, new things coming in your life, right? If you have planets, Uranus, transiting one of your personal planets, your sun is there, Venus, moon, whatever personal planet is there, right? It's going to bring new things in respect to what these planets represent. The moon is going to be on a level of mind, right? On a level of what do I invest in on an emotional level, your receptivity. The sun is your identity, right? Uranus on your sun can be very intense because growth can be happening very fast, right? So with Uranus, and so it's, Uranus is coming on to Taurus here. So interesting to see what's going to happen. That's going to be for a couple of years, right? So Jupiter transits own sign, the first 10 degrees Mula Trikona, so it draws its strength from that position, and it's going to be manifesting. Okay, just I wish you good luck, and let's talk again next year. Bye. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you. And now for Gemini Ascendant. For Gemini, Jupiter's transit through Sagittarius will happen in their 7th house. What is the 7th house? The 7th house is the furthest away from the 1st house. The 1st house is the body, right? So the 7th house represents partnerships, right? The other body. All one-on-one relationships, your relationship with the spouse, trade, right? The 7th house is the house of trade, connects to Libra, right? With the scales, the original 7th sign of the zodiac. The 7th house is the house the furthest away, so it relates to long distance travel. It's the house of conception, intercourse, right? If you want to get pregnant, especially with Jupiter as the karaka of children, right? Connecting to this house, manifesting it, this is a time to do it. If the dashas or the planetary period indicates it, this is definitely a time to start working on a family. You can attract Jupiterian people into your life, right? Jupiter as the Lord coming into its sign, in its own sign, in your 7th house of relationships, a strong Jupiterian individual. Of course, Jupiter is the karaka or the significator for husbands, for a woman, and also for a homosexual man. So all manifesting influence for the whole year for Gemini Ascendant, right? Sagittarius is fire sign, a kshatriya sign, a warrior sign, a pitta, cruel, odd sign. So it's very action oriented. It wants to align us with who we truly are. So also here this plays out in terms of relationships. Okay. Also a relationship can show you how you truly are, right? So because manifesting influence, when these powerful creative planets like Jupiter give their results, it can play out that you learn a lot, right? Jupiter is a sattvic planet, so once it's about it shows you who you truly are, and you can learn so much in this year about who you are through relationships. That's basically the gist of it. Okay, we're going to have Mercury in the first few weeks also in the sign of Sagittarius. Mercury is of course the other manifesting influences. This is according to Gemini's second source of strength, right? So whenever Mercury transits the other dual signs of Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo, there's going to be all manifesting influences on these signs. So whatever these signs represent, for you it's going to be important, but because it's all cardinal points, all foundational points. The self, the 4th house, the home, right? The mother, your emotional contentment, the 7th house of relationships, and the 10th house, your occupation and career. So this is a very nice and favorable transit for Gemini Ascendant, okay? Now, there's going to be a new moon the day before, right? It's going to happen in the sign of Scorpio here, which is the 6th house for Gemini Ascendant. So a new moon the day before. But there's a lot of new beginnings happening. So there's a new moon the day after is going to be Jupiter transiting its own sign here, right? A big change here because this is a slow-moving planet. That's why we emphasize it, right? So it'll be a long transit, so it's worthwhile mentioning. New moons happen regularly, right? So and also the nodes are shifting on the 6th of November. So 2 days before, we're going to shift shift signs from the Leo Aquarius axis to the Cancer Capricorn axis, which is all happening in 1 week. So there's a great shift going on, which is very powerful. And Jupiter, of course, if we take a snapshot of the sky here, it's very promising. Jupiter is fueling this belief, right? Because this Sagittarius relates to our beliefs and higher principles, right? Aligning to who we are and we want to be, to feel fulfilled also. And so it's going to fuel the whole horoscope, right? Because this is pouring through all the houses and all the signs. Okay, so it's going to be a PowerPoint here to tackle any problems that are indicated, for example, here in the 8th house, right, which is under a severe stress because we have all this malefic influence here. Saturn, Pluto, and the South Node is also entering here now for 18 months. Okay, so but the new moon is happening in the 6th house. So new beginnings in respect to becoming more intelligent, right? The 6th house deals with overcoming problems, right? It's one in Gemini. It's one of the houses of intelligence because we learn to tackle problems on a daily basis, right? It can also indicate our the 10th house is occupation, but the 6th house also has that activity. Right? It's an activity house, can have a say on career as well, because the sun is there as well as a karaka of career, right? So we're going to have 3 sattvic planets the day before. Jupiter will still be in Scorpio, in the sign of Scorpio, highlighting so new beginnings, right? So a new moon is a new cycle, right? The moon is going to be waxing, so it's going to be growing again. So in respect to Scorpio, Scorpio also connects to becoming psychologically healthy, right? Emotionally secure. Scorpio is very much about that. So the 6th house, the house of enemies, injuries, cuts, wounds, right? It connects to the stepmother also, and so on. So an Artha house, right? Artha, which deals with our material well-being. So new beginnings in respect to these things, right? Which have a Scorpion undertone, right? Which is always, Scorpio is always shifting. It's always looking for security, right? This is very much what Scorpio represents. That's the most intense sign that is always looking for security and wants to hold on, right? To feel secure. So the new moon is happening there. Then it's going to be a shift in the 7th house. Okay, so because Jupiter, their 7th lord for Gemini, has been transiting their 6th house, right? The 7th lord in the 6th house is a divorce yoga, right? And if you look at natal horoscope, and you know, the 7th lord is afflicted like that. It's one of the divorce yogas. So here we see that Jupiter, the 6th lord of, you know, the lord of relationships, has been in a Dushtana place, in a difficult place for the year of 2018, is now going to enter its own sign in an angle here, right? And in great dignity. So it's going to empower relationships again. Okay, so this is connected with this new moon here. Then the 8th house, as I mentioned, is under great stress. Especially now the South Node is entering the sign of Capricorn. The South Node indicates completions, endings. Okay, things are going to be resolved here. There's going to be some completion and endings here in the coming year. Of course, Saturn manifests Capricorn. Saturn is the planet of hardship and hard work, resistance, resisting pains, our psychological complexes, right? Where we identify too much with who we're not. Pluto is ego bashing. So in respect to, and your 8th house can be inheritances, can be battles, right? The 8th house is the house of battles, and can be in terms of your psychology. The 8th house relates to your weaknesses. Okay, so there can be a lot of stress in respect to these things. Saturn makes it manifesting, so it's good to have Saturn in good dignity there, so it's going to help out for sure. And Pluto is going to, you know, destroy whatever is not authentic there. So whatever you're hiding from yourself, the 8th house is a hidden house, is going to be, you know, uprooted and destroyed. Okay, Uranus is always going to bring in the new, right? The new light, the light of the soul. Whenever you let go of something, because the Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, they're a trinity, right? They always work together. So Pluto destroys the structure and Uranus brings in the new. So in respect to 8th house affairs, which is working the ego, right? The 8th house, other people's money, inheritances, tax refunds, corporations, also the 8th house. It's where we work our ego, right? This is very important. And there's going to be completions there. So there's going to be a high pressure, tense. So this is a house to really watch and to see. It gives a lot of potential. When you see a lot of stress on things, it gives a lot of potential, right? It's like, compared to, you know, diamonds are created under great stress, right? We know the cliche, but this is actually what is happening. So Capricorn is highlighted here. Capricorn, of course, also connects to your status. It's the original 10th house, right? Original 10th sign of the zodiac. Status, your persona, right? How do you perceive yourself, how people see you. Authority figures is connected to that as well. So there's some ego bashing things to let go of, right? Saturn is, you know, supporting good results because it's manifesting its own sign, right? So it shows hardship because Saturn, that's Saturn's nature. It also shows in good dignity, great resistance. But the closer these two will get, Pluto and Saturn, it will be more and more intense. And especially when the node gets involved closer, it means like really letting go. If you're holding on, because Ketu is the most narrow planet, it can really narrow things down. And that's why it can, you know, lead to depression, this kind of thing. So it's going to, you know, really narrow the focus, and it's going to be like a laser sharp transit, we could say, right, to really let go of, right? And the eclipse is going to happen there, right, in Capricorn, Cancer axis. Now, for Gemini, of course, Rahu is entering their 2nd house. Okay, 2nd house is, okay, what is an Artha house, my materials security, right? The 2nd house is a reflection of the 1st house. What do I need to support myself in my life path, to evolve, to develop, right, as a person, also my body, because the 2nd house fuels the 1st house, right? Your food fuels the body, so it relates to your food, the resources, whatever you need to take care of yourself is the 2nd house. And it's Cancer, right, which is also which is a water sign, so it connects also to what you need on an emotional, on a personal level, right, to feel fulfilled. Connects to your heart as well. Cancer always has that connotation. See, the sign is always deeper than the house. The house is always a gateway to the sign. Okay, so you can always get more and more deeper information out of looking at what the sign represents. So we can see that Rahu indicates a need for, see, the 2nd house is your self-value. What do I need? Rahu in the second house, Ketu in the eighth house can get stuck in what they actually need to feel fulfilled. They're not always aware of what they actually need. So this is very much highlighted here. Also, this is Rahu indicates where a person is in need of development, okay, where we're underdeveloped. So Ketu is, where we have created a security paradigm, where we suppress life energy, right, where we try to be perfect, right, but we can't. So it leaves us with a dissatisfaction, and so because we need to get out of our comfort zone and evolve and develop Rahu, right? Because Rahu wants to develop our consciousness in respect to what it transits here, which is Cancer, which is being true to oneself, because Cancer is a Brahmin sign. It's a water sign. Water has always a spiritual connotation. You don't have to be like spiritual, right? Spiritual, it means connecting to something truthful, whatever that may be, okay? And here it's connected to the second house of Artha, material well-being, and your worth, your self-worth, okay? So that's going to be important here, especially if you look at the transformation that is going on with Pluto in the eighth house, ego bashing, right? So the eighth house is a moksha house, right? The hidden house. So getting away from these troubles. And here it's good to focus on what do I need to feel fulfilled, and also take care of your material responsibilities. The second house, the house of responsibilities, right? What do I need to feel fulfilled? And this is connected to your resources, so really finding what you need to feel fulfilled in your life path, which is here the first house, okay? So Venus is still here in the fifth house retrograde, which is nice in its own sign, which again makes it also manifesting, right? And which is a karaka for relationships, so it gives some and can give some nice things. Planet that is retrograde always can give more because it is closer to the earth. See, so Venus will move on then and transit your sixth house, going through some transformation here, right? So it's always moving, right? Okay, so Jupiter transits, especially in terms of relationships, trade, businesses, and this kind of thing. Seventh house, conception. Jupiter as a karaka for children. These things are all under review. Also long distance travel. Okay, good luck and talk to you next year. Bye. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you. And now for Cancer Ascendant. For Cancer, Jupiter's transits will happen in their sixth house. Now, what is the sixth house? The sixth house is an Artha house. Artha means, deals with material well-being. So the sixth house is the house of enemies. Okay, so it connects to your debts, for example, paying your dues, injuries, cuts, accidents. The sixth house relates to Virgo, right? The original sixth sign of the zodiac, which is all about improving our health and our daily material Artha situation. So Jupiter transiting its own sign there, right? It's Mula Trikona, where it draws its strength, being a sattvic planet, so it shows our true nature. So it's going to learn, it's going to teach us how to go about this, paying dues, paying off debts, creating your health situation. Maybe you go on a regime, or you decide to take more exercises or something like that. So improving on your health, improving on your daily situation, right? The sixth house, because we want to tackle we need to tackle problems, right, which are our enemies, right? This is what is being said. We become smarter, right? Become more intelligent. In Gemini, the sixth house is one of the houses of intelligence, okay? The sixth also relates to being focused, like it creates you develop a concentration and focus to tackle these problems. And Jupiter, of course, being a Brahmin, right, always gives knowledge and understanding, whatever it conjuncts, okay? A lot of manifesting influence, as I mentioned. Mercury is also there as a second manifesting graha, according to Gemini's second source of strength, right? And these grahas will influence all the dual signs for the whole year, right? Whenever Mercury transits the other dual signs of Pisces, Virgo, and Gemini, there will be the two manifesting influences. So you can expect these things to come to fruition, which connects to your third house of, commerce, developing your skills. The sixth house of debts, as I mentioned, and then also the ninth house of which is a Dharma house for Cancer Ascendant. Okay, the ninth house, which connects to their inspiration, higher learning, marriage, for example. Right, all these things will be manifested on two accounts when Mercury transits those signs. Okay, so this is good news. So improving on your material life situation. Yes. Okay, the sixth house. Now, there's going to be a new moon in the fifth house for Cancer the day before. So see, there's a shift going on, a serious shift, new beginnings, because we're going to have a new moon the day before Jupiter transits Sagittarius. And 2 days before that, on the 6th, the nodes will shift signs. So Rahu is going to enter the sign of Cancer, and Ketu will enter the sign of Capricorn, right? So there's going to be a 1-7 axis. The nodes will be occupying this axis for the next 18 months, which is going to be very important, right? Cancer, of course, is the body, right? Represents the first house is the body. So it represents the Swadharma, the path that the individual is on. Cancer is a Brahmin sign, a Sattvic sign. Sattva deals with our true essence, and it's a Brahmin sign, so it's about contemplation. You know, the water signs have the strongest potential for spiritual development, according to Gemini. So it has a strong need to feel what it needs, right? Cancer, of course, a water sign, right, connected to the heart. So Rahu is going to create some turmoil there, right? The Rahu always shows where an individual is in need of development. Ketu shows completions and endings. Okay, so in respect to the 7th house here, because there's a lot of stress because of Saturn, Pluto, and the south node now entering the sign of Capricorn on the 7th house of Cancer, which is relationships. Okay. Trade. Capricorn has the Lord Saturn in there, so manifesting it, so it can give good results. Pluto shows intensity. You know, Pluto is the ego basher, right? Whatever is not authentic about our relationships is going to be smashed by Pluto. This is what Pluto indicates. And the closer Saturn and Pluto come together, the more intense this will get. Okay. Then Ketu shows completions. Okay, endings. Whatever you need to let go of, because Ketu always shows where we suppress life energy, where we try to control things, where we try to become perfect, right? So as a consequence, because we can't attain that perfection, we become dissatisfied. And so Rahu shows the need, because Rahu wants to push us out of our comfort zone and develop our consciousness in respect to Cancer, in respect to what we need to feel fulfilled on an emotional level. It's investing in a new feeling. Cancer is a movable sign, right? Movable signs are about action. And Rahu, of course, it's also related to foreign travel and this kind of thing. And Rahu is also an indicator of foreign affairs. So a nodal shift here. Now, Jupiter in the 6th house, of course, you know, when Jupiter becomes strong, it becomes a highlight in the horoscope, right? It's where we find possibility, understanding, where we grow things. And so, of course, an Artha position is important, right? Rahu has been transiting Leo, which is an Artha position for Cancer, which is your resources in the last 18 months, challenging Cancer in respect to what they need to feel fulfilled on the path, right? Also on a material level. And now Jupiter, the shift here shows an increase in, their material situation, an increase in for finances can be like that, right? The 6th house, Artha, has these connotations, of course. But the intensity is here in the karma, right? Or I should say the tense lessons, the difficult lessons lie in the 7th house here with Saturn, which represents our complexes, where we need to grow, right? Where we are attaching too much to things perhaps that are not really working. Now it is manifesting, so it creates relationships, but you'll see that for a lot of Cancers, even though when they create relationships, there's going to be a lot of tension, a lot of pressure. The 7th house is shows us who we are, right? The first house is the seventh from the seventh house, so it always comes back to us, right? The seven is what we project out there, so we attract these things, indicated by Saturn's transit, right? Manifesting influence onto Capricorn. Pluto shows where we need to let go of certain, ideas that we thought were true, for example, but are not, or certain ideas about ourselves in respect to relationships are being scattered, okay? And there's going to be some completions, real endings for Cancer Ascendant in the coming 18 months, right? Because the eclipses are going to happen there. Now, at the time of the new moon, right, which is here happening in their fifth house of knowledge, which is happening the day before, consistency, knowledge, okay? The fifth house relates to children, creative projects. We have all this sattvic influence here. The day before, Jupiter will be still in Scorpio. We have the sun, moon, and Jupiter, which are three sattvic influences which deal with our true nature. So a lot of creativity is highlighted here, okay? There's a nice trine with Neptune, which is always a spiritualizing influence, right? Again, Neptune wants to create breakthroughs on a level of mind because it relates to the moon, right? And it's here connected to this nice sattvic sun, which sheds a light on creativity. It's the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is always diving deep, right? If you're having your fifth house, having Scorpio as your fifth house means your creativity can reach deep. It can really connect you to deep subconscious aspects of your being, and so it can be a highly creative time. And then there's a new moon here, right? So the moon is going to wax, so it's going to grow, and it's a cycle of growth in respect to the fifth house as well. And if we look at Jupiter transiting then the sixth, so this is going to be happening, right? All within a couple of days. So a lot of shifts, a lot of energetic changes, new beginnings happening, okay? Yes, I think so. Also, yeah, Venus is still retrograde for Cancer at that point, and right, so retrograde planets are stronger because they're closer to the Earth. It's happening in their fourth house, which is nice. Venus is a karaka of relationships, so being retrograde, it can bring back some relationships, or maybe a partner comes back into your life or something like that. Okay, there's a nice trine with Mars here, which can juice up things, right? Mars representing the hunger, and Venus representing is soothing that hunger, right? So a trine here is the most harmonious aspect. So it's all good here. So most important, the Artha houses, the material well-being, paying your debts, right? Taking care of your that dimension of your reality is going to be important, and relationships are going to be under serious transformation as well when you have Pluto involved. Okay, some completions will happen, and also manifesting influences. We're learning because through relationships, Cancer learns about their own vulnerabilities, their weaknesses, their resistances, and so on. Okay, and here Rahu in the first house, of course, shows a need to Cancer needs to develop their life path, right? Who they are, and stay true to the path, right? And Rahu is going to create some confusion there for sure, but that is the path to go, and through that we will learn. And the more you emphasize, or the more you are willing to open up for what Rahu wants to present, so meaning not holding on, not expecting too much, because Rahu can give this compulsive need for things, and that's how the way it works, right? It puts you out of it creates a need within you, compulsive need often. So you go after that thing, but then when you get that thing, actually get it, it seems to disappoint you because it is not able to really fulfill you, all right? The point of Rahu is it wants to help you grow your consciousness by taking you out of your comfort zone. Of course, Rahu can also give things, right? And Ketu as well. Ketu is a spiritualizing influence, so it can spiritualize your seventh house of relationships, right? Pluto there as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see on the seventh house. See, but the Jupiter is going to take care of that material dimension of your life. So there's a lot of things happening in horoscope, and so just touching on a few of these things. Okay, good luck, and talk to you next year. Bye. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you. And now for Leo Ascendant. For Leo, Jupiter will be transiting their fifth house. What is the fifth house? The fifth house is the house of consistency, continuance. It is the house of knowledge, most importantly. Yeah, the house of your creativity. That's why it relates to children, right? The fifth house is also the eighth from the 10th house, which is a fall from royalty. This is what Parashara gives also. So it also has that connotation. It is a Dharma house. Dharma means nature, right? It's a house that can give things more easily, especially when you have planets in good dignity there. And Jupiter is transiting its Mula Trikona, right? And between the first 10 degrees where it draws its strength from, and its own sign in the sign of Sagittarius. So Jupiter being a sattvic planet, right? A Brahmin planet. Brahmins deal with, all about understanding and knowledge. So Jupiter, whatever it transits, it wants to understand about that thing. It wants to pour its wisdom into that thing, right? Especially in good dignity, it's able to do that most naturally. In the sign of Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, a Kshatriya sign, right? Which is all, juiced up to create projects, okay? Creative projects are definitely highlighted and manifested. Can be the birth of a child, for example. Jupiter is the Karaka, or the significator of children, the fifth house of children, and so on. So this is an inspirational year, right, for Leo Ascendant. It's nice to have Jupiter in its own sign in the fifth house. So great. Then Mercury is also there in the beginning, right? Mercury is the other manifesting graha, according to Gemini, right? And whenever Mercury conjuncts or transits the other dual signs, so Pisces, Virgo, and Gemini, there will be the two manifesting influences onto these signs. So you can expect things coming to fruition, to manifestation, in these rashis. Okay, so for Leo, it's going to be their second house of resources, their fifth, right, of creativity, and then the eighth house, which is Pisces, which is other people's resources. The eighth has an occult connotation, right? It's the house where we work our egos, but it has a financial connotation as well, because it's other people's resources or inheritances and this kind of thing, right? So this is all positive, right? Now, at the same time, now the day before the transit, Jupiter transits Sag, there will be a new moon in the sign of Scorpio, which is the fourth house for Leo. There's a lot of beginnings, new beginnings, right? We have a new moon the day before Jupiter shifts into Sagittarius. And also 2 days before that, on the 6th, we have the nodes changing signs. So Rahu is going to enter the sign of Cancer, and Ketu, or the south node of the moon, will transit Capricorn. Okay, so this is going to be very important. Now, let's start with the new moon also at that time. So the new moon is going to be in their fourth house of home, right? Of emotional security and peace of mind, which is the fourth house. Also, it relates to vehicles. The mother is connected to the fourth house. So new beginnings in respect to the home situation, right? May it be the material home, or also your internal home, what you feel true, what is close to your heart, which is the fourth house, right? The fourth house is the house below what is deep within you. So new beginnings in respect to these things. The fourth house is also a moksha house, which is about internal development, right? Getting away from the troubles of the world, so to speak. Okay, so new beginnings. There's going to be a waxing phase of the moon there, so things are going to grow there, right? We have the 3 sattvic planets. The day before, Jupiter will be still transiting Scorpio, so we're going to have the Sun, the Moon, and Jupiter, 3 sattvic. So sattva deals with our true essence in that sign, highlighting that sign, right? And then Jupiter is going to enter the 5th house of creativity. Also, the 5th relates to clients, like, having more clients, and so on. So Now, the intensity for Leo ascendants lies in the 6th house, right? We have Saturn transiting their 6th house in its own sign, so it becomes manifesting there. But Saturn is a malefic planet. It's the planet of our psychological issues, right? Our complexes. It is a planet of resistance. In its own sign, again, it becomes manifesting, right? This is, again, applying Gemini's second source of strength. So it can give results there, good results. You want Saturn in good dignity, right? But we also see Pluto there, right? Which is connected to Shiva, which is the ego destroyer, right? So whatever inauthenticities are there are under serious review, right? So the job, or Pluto's job, is to destroy whatever is not really working out, right? Where the soul is really getting stuck, or where the ego gets stuck. Right? Pluto is going to realign you with who you truly are eventually. Now, to break the ego is a painful thing, right? So always needs some recovery. But this is happening in the 6th house, which is an Artha house of material well-being, right? So the challenges lie there. There's hard work there. Saturn shows this. It always shows where we need to put in the hard work. But if you work hard, it's going to give results. Pluto is going to create some, definitely some intensity. It's been doing that for a number of years now, right? But because Saturn is coming closer to Pluto, the conjunction is going to be tighter. And we also, of course, have the South Node, another cruel planet, entering on the 6th of November. So Ketu, always the South Node of the moon, shows endings and completions. It shows where we suppress life energy, where we try to control things, right? Ketu is where we look for perfection, but we can't attain perfection, right? So it leaves us with dissatisfaction. So Rahu, right, the north node of the moon, points where we need to develop, right? Rahu shows a need for development, which for Leo ascendant is going to happen in their 12th house. The 12th is a moksha house. The 12th house relates to expenses, losses, ashrams or hidden places of research. But in the sign of Rahu, in the sign of Cancer, right? The sign is always deeper than the house. Cancer shows where is a water sign, a Brahmin sign. It deals with our needs, okay, how we feel. It's this emotionally sensitive point. So Rahu shows a need for developing a new, or investing in a new thing, a new emotion, right? New, because Cancer is a movable Rashi, movable sign, so it wants to change things, okay? And so there's going to be this tension here in the 6th house of Artha, and there's going to be a need to let go, right? Rahu in the 12th house, Ketu in the 6th house. Ketu in the 6th wants to control things. It wants to control too much its Artha reality and overemphasize it and create problems because of it, right? Rahu shows where the 12th house is really surrendering to something that you don't really have any control over. So letting the universe do its work, right? And through aligning, through finding out what you need to feel fulfilled. Because it's a water sign, it's also a Brahmin sign, which connects us to knowledge and understanding. It's also a Sattvic Rashi, which says, okay, what do I need? Who am I really? Okay, and Rahu indicates it shows the need there. It shows that it's going to challenge Leo ascendant to let go, right? The more you control Ketu, the more narrow your perspective becomes, and it can lead to a nervous breakdown, for example, right? Ketu is that most narrow planet. So Rahu shows, okay, here, connect to your emotions, take some time off, right? Cancer relates to foreign countries. Rahu is also a foreign indicator, but can also create some turmoil there, some confusion, because Rahu's goal is to evolve our consciousness by taking us out of our comfort zone. Okay, so but it's important to surrender and let the universe, let the world do its work. Like learn to adapt an approach, or to let the things more come to you than really focusing on it, really squeezing it too much so that it can't really breathe here. So this is in terms of 6th house affairs. The 6th relates to enemies, right? Injuries, cuts, wounds, paying your debts, right? That's the 6th house, okay? But here it's the house of intelligence, the house of Artha and material well-being. So a lot of lessons to learn in respect. Also, of course, the sixth relates to the original sixth sign of the zodiac, which is Virgo, which is all about health and health regimes. Okay, a lot of cleansing, right? Saturn is here, of course, showing this, like diets and everything. Saturn will restrict things, and this will give good results. And Pluto gives some intensity. So where are we holding on to certain things in respect to our artha, in material well-being, in respect to our enemies, right? Which we're always our worst enemy. And so there's going to be there will be some completions there, some endings. So it's an important point here, this 12th, 6th axis, okay? So, okay, we have the new moon in the 4th, we have Jupiter transiting the 5th of creativity, you know, challenges in respect to artha and overcoming difficulties, yes? So that is the way to go, okay? So Mars is still going to be at the time of the transit and the new moon in the 8th house here, right? Mars in the 8th is not really a stable point. There's have been eclipses for Leo and Aquarius for the last 18 months. So now the nodes are changing, right? So there's going to be, there's a lot of work has been done for Leo, right? Rahu in Leo, so a lot of development. Rahu in a fire sign is always about self-development, okay? And what do I need? What is my inspiration, right? Becoming a leader, right? Fire signs are always have the potential to lead. And so now at the time of the new moon, mentioning here, we see the trine, a nice aspect between the Sun and Neptune. Neptune is always a spiritualizing influence, especially here in a trine. Now, Neptune can create longings, right? But Neptune wants to eventually create breakthroughs on the level of mind. And of course, the 4th house relates to the mind, yes? And so there's going to be a spiritualizing influence there on this nice sattvic sun, right, which indicates the soul. This is shedding a light on 4th house affairs in the sign of Scorpio, which is always, you know, diving deep, right, and becoming emotionally secure. This is always what fixed Scorpio wants, right, to feel secure. All right, so this is a nice aspect. Venus is still in the 3rd house. It's not retrograde. Venus is, of course, a karaka for relationships and love. It has a nice trine from Mars. Right, Mars is the hunger, Venus is soothing that hunger, so it can juice things up, which is nice. And so in respect to, you know, developing skills, the 3rd house, right, overcoming difficulties, commerce, and all sorts of, all the 3rd house connotations, using your courage and will, right? And balancing things out also, right? Venus in its own sign is manifesting. Venus, the karaka of relationships, but also your self-worth, right? Being diplomatic and so on in your communications, which also connects to the 3rd house. So these are a few things that will happen at that time. Most importantly, Jupiter transit through its Dharma house, right? One of the nice houses for a Leo ascendant, a fire sign. It's going to give a lot of insight, a lot of growth in respect to your creative potential. Okay, that's important. And that is what we need to feel happy, right? If we are productive and creative, we feel joyous, and this is also indicated by this nice Jupiter in great dignity here. Okay, so good luck and talk to you next year. Bye. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you. And now for Virgo ascendant. For Virgo, Jupiter will be transiting their 4th house. Now, what is the 4th house? The 4th house is the house below, right? It's below our feet. So what is deep within the heart, what you yearn for on an emotional level. It's a time to contemplate. The 4th house is the house of mind. Okay, it relates to Cancer, and the ruler of Cancer is the moon, right, which represents the mind. Cancer is the original 4th sign of the zodiac. The 4th represents the mother's nourishment. Also, it represents the home, vehicles, and all sorts of comforts is seen from the 4th house. And the 4th also relates to your wealth. Okay. Now, Jupiter is a sattvic Brahman, and sattva is, you know, the true essence of things. the Brahmins, Jupiter and Venus, get into the concrete experiences of the sign because they want to understand about it. Jupiter is Jiva, right? Which means living, enlivening. So it's going to give it's going to pour its wisdom and joyous nature into the hearts of Virgo ascendant. So it's a good transit. Right? Whatever is going on in your horoscope, it's a powerful point, a powerful thing to have Jupiter in such strong dignity in the fourth house, which is one of the cardinal points, one of the foundation points, okay, the heart. The first is the body, the fourth is the mother, the seventh is the spouse, and the 10th, the father. These are the foundation points, okay? So, of course, Jupiter is a manifesting influence, according to Gemini, and it's going to Rashi aspect all dual signs for the whole year of 2019, okay, and the end of 2018. So, it's going to manifest all these points. So whatever contains these signs for you are going to be under influence of under manifesting influence. So that is, you know, again, connecting to yourself, to the life path, which is the first house, the home and your nourishment, the fourth, what you need to feel nourished on a level of heart. Yeah. Then in terms of relationships as well, Neptune is still there, right? Which can create some longings as well. And then the 10th house, which connects to your occupation, your status and your career. So we also see that Mercury is, at the time Jupiter is transiting, is in the sign of Sagittarius. Sometime later, it's going to go retrograde. So it's going to be quite some time in the sign of Sagittarius. It's going to slip into a Scorpio a little bit. Then it's going to be a long transit of Mercury, which is the second manifesting graha, according to Gemini, manifesting all these points, right? All these cardinal points. So this is a good time. Now, the day before Jupiter's transit, we have a new moon in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is the third house for Virgo ascendant, which connects to your skills, right? Technical intelligence, developing your skills, applying your will, courage, right? Is the third house. The third connects to deprivation of parents as well, because it's the eighth from the eighth, right? The eighth is an important house, right? It deals with life force, and the eighth from the break from also connects to the third house. So the third house is also not an easy house, but because we have to put the effort in. So whenever we put in the effort, we work on it, we develop our skills, which is important to express ourselves in the fifth house, right? Then we create results, right? The third house is one of the Upachaya houses, which means it grows over time. So new beginnings there. It's going to be a waxing phase of the moon starting, yes? So the moon is growing, so you can build on things, and things can become concrete and manifest in respect to third house affairs, okay? Then it's in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio has always that, psychological, emotional connotation, becoming psychological mature, emotionally secure, which is all about, which is what Scorpio is all about, right? So, and the sign always goes deeper than the house, okay? So you can, if you see a new moon happening in Scorpio, then it can connect to your third house, but also always consider Scorpio as a sign, what it represents. It is always about finding security. So finding security in developing new skills, in applying your will, your courage, right? Putting the effort in. And Jupiter's transit the day after is going to, be in your fourth house, blessing that fourth house, blessing the heart. It's a time to contemplate. The fourth house is one of the moksha houses. Okay, moksha means liberation. So where we go within. Okay, so having said that, now I said the fifth house is the house of creativity, right? This is a house that is under great stress for Virgo ascendants, because we have the cruel planet Saturn there in good dignity, right? In its own sign there. So it's going to manifest that sign, and it's coming slowly but surely closer to its conjunction here with Pluto. And Pluto is, of course, the ego basher, right? It relates to Shiva in Hindu mythology. So whenever the ego wanders off too far, right, Pluto's job and the other planet's job is to realign, the soul, right? What is the soul here to do? And to connect again to the soul. So it forces an individual to make the journey back, we could say. So it can be painful, but it's always bringing out more authenticity, more more realness, right? And so, which is good because this is in respect to your creative endeavors. Okay, this fifth also relates to knowledge, learning things. So putting in the work there, right? We also see a lot of work required here in the third house during this new moon, and so on. So now that's not all, okay? Because 2 days before, on the 6th of November, we will have the nodal shifts, okay? The nodes will shift. Rahu and Ketu, the south and north node of the moon, will change signs from Leo Aquarius to Cancer and Capricorn. And for Virgo Ascendant, that's going to be in their 5th, 11th axis. Okay, so we have the stress going on because of Saturn and Pluto here, Saturn manifesting it, but we also see Ketu. Ketu is the south node of the moon. Ketu shows where we suppress life energy, so it's going to intensify this malefic influence on this 5th house here. And the 5th house is the house of romance and creativity, right? So this is under pressure, but there's a lot of rewards to get out of it. Whenever you see these configurations, these difficult conjunctions, then there's a lot of pressure. So there's a lot of things to get out of there, a lot of ego to let go. Once you let that go, once you overcome these complexes, which is always indicated by Saturn, Saturn shows where we are, where we investing in things perhaps that are not really true to ourselves. Okay, so it's gonna it's not Saturn that creates that, but Saturn brings up these vulnerabilities, these psychological vulnerabilities to overcome. So wherever Saturn is an area in your chart where you have to learn, where you have to put in the effort, we say, right? Saturn connected to hard work. So, but the south node is going to create some completions there, right? In the next 18 months. And so, this is happening in respect to the 5th house, so children, creativity, and so on. Now, as I mentioned, so Ketu represents where we suppress life energy because we have created a security paradigm there. Ketu is where we look at things too narrow. And for Virgo, it's going to be 5th, 11th axis. The 11th is where Rahu is. Rahu shows where a person is in need of development. Okay, so we have the 11th house, but we also have the sign Cancer here, which again goes always deeper, right? The sign goes always deeper. So the 11th relates to social networks, but the 11th house is acquisition of various objects, is what Parashara gives. So it's what you crave for on a material level, right? In terms of what do you desire on a concrete worldly level. So the 11th house is a strong Kama house, which Kama means desire. It's also an Upachaya house. It's the strongest of the growing houses. So the 11th is the titles you receive, okay, the recognition you get, the love from the world, right? The love from the public also is the 11th house. It's a house of gains, right? Importantly. So it means from whatever you have been creating here in this 5th house, okay, because the 5th lies between the 1st and the 7th, right? So it's a kind of below the surface, we can say. So in the 11th, we express that. We express it into the world. That's why it connects to larger social networks. You bring your stuff out there. So it's important to whatever you received and in terms of your creativity, can also connect to other things like children or learning. You have to bring that out into, or put that into something concrete in the world, right? And this will create gains for you. This is what Rahu indicates. Rahu is always a confusing influence because, again, it's where we are in need of development. And this is connected to Cancer. Cancer is a water sign, and a Brahmin sign, right? The water always connects to emotions and spirituality. The Brahmin signs are signs that contemplate. It's also a Sattvic sign, right? Sattva is, again, because doing something because it aligns with who you truly are, right? And the 11th house, putting something out there, trying and get gains from that, and staying true to yourself in the process. And whatever you express out there, connect that to Cancer, connect that to something sattvic, truthful. Okay, so this is an important axis. This is where the eclipses will happen for the next 18 months. Okay, now during this new moon, to go back to the new moon there, the day before Jupiter transits Sagittarius, there will be a trine from Neptune to the Sun, which is nice, right? Neptune is always a spiritualizing influence. It can create longings as well, right? This is happening here in their 7th house. It is also a dissolving aspect, right? It can be because it relates to Vishnu, which is dissolver, right? Preserver and dissolving things. So, but this is a nice spiritualizing influence to this nice sattvic sun, right? The sun is always where the light is, right? What your soul is connected to. And so here is connected to Scorpio, so the deep diving, shedding a light on some psychological, deep subconscious affairs, right? And Neptune's throwing its trine there, right? Or the sun trining Neptune rather, shows a nice harmonious spiritualizing influence. Okay, we see that Venus is still in the 2nd house. It's still retrograde. So the 2nd house, their resources, which is nice. Venus is also a karaka, or a significator for relationships. So relationships can be under review, or a partner from the past comes back, something like that. There's a nice trine with Mars here, which can juice things up, right? Mars, the planet of hunger. Venus is always a soothing influence. Venus is always a healer as well. So in respect to your self-worth and so on, which is the 2nd house here. Okay, so we see a great transit in the 4th house for Virgo Ascendant. We see a new moon in the 3rd house of skills. The 3rd also relates to commerce and so on. So, but applying your will and your action to make it happen, right? It has a spiritual connotation. It's all happening in Scorpio, which is always deals with transformation. Okay, and then we have the nodal shift to the 5th, 11th axis. So Rahu shows where you need to evolve, right? What you need to go. So and it will create some fear also. But if you open your eyes and see what is actually necessary, right? This is connected to Cancer, which is always important to align with what you feel, okay, and what is true to yourself again, and bring that out, right? So a lot of hard work in terms of studying, perhaps knowledge, developing knowledge, also creative projects can be a lot of work, a lot of ego to let go. Sometimes you can have certain perceptions that perhaps are not you anymore, or something like that, or people confront you with certain aspects, vulnerabilities within yourself, right? It's happening in the sign of Capricorn, which is the original 10 sign, which connects to authority figures, right? And institutions and so on. So, right, so that's some information for Virgo Ascendant. I wish you all the best and talk to you next year. Bye. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you. And now for Libra Ascendant. For Libra, Jupiter will be transiting their 3rd house. What is the 3rd house? The 3rd house is Upadesa, so learning something new. The 3rd house is one of the Upachaya houses. So it grows, it's a house that grows over time. The 3rd house is where we apply our will, right, and our courage. In that sense, we need the strength and a good march to develop these skills, right? In the 3rd house, we develop skills. In the 5th house, we express them into something creative. Okay, that's why the 3rd also relates to technical intelligence. There's really get, learning the ABC, learning to play a new instrument. That's why the 3rd also relates to performing arts and so on. The 3rd also connects to short distance travel. Deprivation of parents is what Prashara gives, because it's the 8 from the 8, right? The 8 is the life force. The 8 from the 8 is a break from the life force. So this also connects to that. But specifically, he gives deprivation of parents. So which is now is good, right? Because Jupiter is going to transit its own sign there. It's Mula Trikona position within the first 10 degrees, which makes it very strong. So learning new skills, right? Jupiter as a Sattvic Brahmin, Sattva, something that connects to who you truly are. A Brahmin is all about understanding and knowledge. So technical skills. So this is a good transit for Libra, right? Libra is gonna enjoy learning new things, right? Jupiter is always a joyful planet, especially in good dignity. It pours its wisdom into how to go about this, right? It will give you the ease, and it's a highly creative force to develop your skills, whatever that may be. The third also connects to commerce, and applying that will. Okay, now see at the beginning of the transit, we have Mercury there as well. Mercury, according to Gemini, is also a manifesting graha, manifesting influence. So we're going to have the two manifesting planets in the sign of Sagittarius for quite some time. Now, whenever Mercury transits the other dual signs, which are Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo, there's going to be two manifesting influences onto all these signs, which for Virgo, which for Libra is the third house, the sixth house, and what is it here, the 12th house. So these houses will also be under manifesting influence, meaning whatever contains these signs, what these signs represent for you in your horoscope, the houses and so on, are going to be coming to fruition. Things are going to be coming to fruition there. Okay, so especially when you have the two manifesting influences there as well, right, which is Mercury transiting these points, that will be about 4 months a year, right? So that's good news. So developing your technical abilities, your skills, and so on. Applying your will, using your courage, all third house affairs, yes? Then that is not all. Of course, the day before, we're going to have a new moon in the sign of Scorpio. For Libra, that's going to be in their second house. So new beginnings in respect to what you need to support you on the life path, right? That can be everything that you need to, that supports you on the life path, and finances, resources, right? That's why the second connects to money, food, friends, close family, all these kinds of things. So the second house is your self-worth, yes? But importantly, it's an Artha house, it's a finance house. So new beginnings in respect to that. I'm going to have the three Sattvic planets. Jupiter is going to be there the day before in that sign. So highlighting, right? The sun always sheds a light. It's also happening in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is always about transformation and diving deep, becoming psychologically and emotionally secure, right? This is what Scorpio is all about. So then Jupiter transits the third house, developing some skills. We see that there's a lot of stress on the fourth house for Libra. Okay, we have Saturn in its own house, in good dignity, which is great. So it's going to manifest as well. It's coming closer to its conjunction with Pluto. So for Libra, it's been challenging because Pluto in the fourth house, the fourth is your heart, right? What you crave for on an internal level, on an emotional level. The fourth is a moksha house, is of getting away from the troubles of the world, about contemplation. It connects to the mother, to your home country also. And so there's a lot of challenges in respect to fourth house affairs for Libra Ascendant, and have been for quite some time, since Jupiter, has been transiting Capricorn for a long time. Now Saturn is there in its own sign, hard work. Saturn is, of course, a malefic, right? So it can bring up some vulnerabilities, psychological sensitivities to be healed, and it's going to give good results because it's in its own sign. You want Saturn in good dignity there, right? But it's not an easy thing to have Saturn in the fourth house because it's one of the cardinal points. It's your heart, right? So a malefic on your heart, even if it's in good dignity, is going to be requiring a lot of work, internal work as well, which connects to the fourth house. The fourth house is the house of mind, okay? Now, we see that the 2 days before, on the 6th of November, the nodes are shifting into Cancer, Capricorn. So we're going to have the South Node also entering, or joining this combo here. So it's going to make things even more intense, we could say, right? Now, Ketu shows completions. Okay, so there's going to be some endings in respect to the fourth house for Libra Ascendant. Ketu is where we have created a security paradigm. It's where we suppress life energy. It's where we try to control too much. Okay, and it leaves us with a dissatisfaction. Ketu always shows where we want to be perfect, but we can be perfect. So that leaves us with that feeling. So the goal is to develop Rahu, right? The north node of the moon. Rahu shows always where an individual is in need of development. And this is, of course, happening on a collective level, right? It's happening in the sign of Cancer. Cancer is a water sign, which connects to emotions. Always has a spiritual connotation, right? Water. It's a Brahmin sign. It wants to understand, contemplate things, and it's a sattvic sign. Sattva is the true essence. So, you know, because this is happening in the 10th house here for Libra Ascendant. So your occupation, your status in the world, your persona also. So who are you truly? So the invitation for Virgo, for Libra Ascendant is to connect to what they really want to express in terms of their great deeds, right? The Karma Bhava, the 10th house, Karma means action, and Bhava means house, okay? So it's the 10th house is where we perform our great deeds. This is what Libra is going to be focusing upon, okay? Now, Rahu can be a confusing influence because Rahu shows where we are in need of development. So we are underdeveloped there, right? This is also connecting to emotions because it's Cancer. Also, always look deeper at the sign as well, because the sign is deeper, right? The house is kind of a gateway to the sign. So in terms of your occupation, your career, you're performing your deeds in the world, how do you express yourself in the world, status, authority figures, these can all be triggers to go deeper into what you truly need to feel fulfilled, which is Cancer, right? Which is important during this time period for, it's going to be 18 months of transits of the nodes to the signs, right? For Libra Ascendant, see? So a lot of stress here in the 4th house in terms of to feel secure within their hearts, right? And so bring that out here. That's the challenge, okay? Bring it out in a truthful manner, which is Cancer. Okay, so of course Venus is still in the 1st house here in its own sign, manifesting nicely. This is good for health. Venus retrograde planets are always closer to the Earth and can give more, right? On a psychological level, they can also create some confusion because, for example, as a karaka, as a significator for relationships and love, maybe relationships can come back from the past or something like that, or it can invite you to take a good look at your self-worth, which is Venus, right? Venus is also the planet, the diplomat, right? Venus is the minister, but it has a nice trine here from Mars. Mars is, of course, represents our hunger, our energy. Venus is soothing that energy, so it's a great aspect here at the time of you know, the Jupiter transiting and Sagittarius. So I'm going over this because it's like taking a snapshot. So, but there's a lot of new beginnings. So we have Jupiter, a slow moving planet, right? That's why we pay attention going into the sign of Sagittarius. Then we have a new moon the day before, and we have 2 days before that shift, the nodal axis changing. So it's like a new beginning. Right? Jupiter transit through the 3rd house, right? The developing your skills, applying your will, right? Jupiter is a wise planet and good dignity there. So it's going to be, you know, supporting all these things for the next year. Yeah. A little stress on the 4th house, a lot of things to get out of in terms of, you know, your emotions. It's a time to grow emotionally, right? Saturn always shows where we, are really putting in the work, right? And it's going to give good results during its 2.5-year transit through the sign of Capricorn. The nodes are joining, the south node joins this Pluto-Saturn combo there. So a lot of completions. Ketu is also a spiritualizing influence, right? So it shows completions, but it's difficult sometimes with Ketu because we are overly controlling there, and because Ketu is that narrow, the south node is that narrow planet, so it's going to, you know, bring up some lessons there, of course, with Saturn and Pluto being there as well. So a lot of growth in respect to these things for sure, okay? But you counteract that by going into Cancer, right, which is the 10th house, so doing something on an external level, doing something in the world that is connected to who you are, right, which is Cancer. Okay, so good luck and talk to you next year. Bye. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you. And now for Scorpio ascendant. For Scorpio, Jupiter will be transiting their second house. Now, what is the second house? The second house is an Artha house. It's a house of material well-being, okay? The second house is a reflection of the first house. So whatever you need to support your life path, which is the first house, is the second house. So resources, right? Your money, the money that you make, close friends, family, all these things, food, the name you get, and so on. This is all given in the second house. The second house is also the house of your talents, and importantly, the house of responsibilities, right? It's also a Maraka house, which is a death-inflicting house. So when you're not, losing responsibility, something dies, right? So a lot of growth in respect to Artha for Scorpio ascendant, in respect to their resources, whatever they need to support themselves on the life path. The second house is such an important house, right? As I mentioned, it's a reflection of the first house. So Jupiter in Mula Trikona in the first 10 degrees, and then its own sign is going to manifest there strongly for the whole year. Okay, so we see in the beginning of the transit, Mercury is also there. Some days, I think a week later, it's going to be going retrograde. It's going to go into the sign of Scorpio as well, and then it's going to pass through Sagittarius. So we're going to have two manifesting influences, and this is according to Gemini's second source of strength onto Sagittarius. Now, by Rashi aspect, the dual signs will be benefiting from this as well. So the dual signs, all dual signs, so Gemini, Virgo, and Pisces, will have this manifesting influence onto it, right? So whenever Mercury, which is the second manifesting graha, right, transits these signs, Pisces, Virgo, and Gemini, and there will be two manifesting grahas onto it. And so the things in respect to that, these signs, these houses, right, which represent concrete things, will come to fruition for you, okay? The Artha house is an important house. We live on Earth, right? It's a material reality, and so we need to find what we need, right? The second house is finding what you need when you need it, in fact, okay? The fourth house is the house of wealth, okay? All right, so that's important. Now, the day before Jupiter transits Sagittarius, we're going to have a new moon in the sign of Scorpio, right? In the first house for Scorpio, which is good. So connecting to the life path, we have all these sattvic planets, Jupiter, Sun, and Moon in highlighting Scorpio, right? So this is the first house is the Swadharma, the natural inclination, what you're here to do, right? It's an important factor to consider to look at career and so on. So the sun sheds a light, always sattva, right? It's where the soul is. It's an important point here. So it's going to emphasize what is needed on the life path, insight in respect to whatever you need to support yourself, to go about expressing who you are and whatever that may be during this next 2 weeks, right? When the moon is waxing, so growing, right? You're able to build on things. So that's good. Scorpio is, of course, Jupiter has been, great in Scorpio, right? So remember when Jupiter went in there, all these scandals came up, all the dirt came up, right? So Scorpio, a hidden house, a hidden sign, right? It's the original 8th sign of the zodiac, which connects to the 8th house, which is hidden, sudden things, taboo, and so on. So a lot of psychological, emotional transformation connected to Scorpio. So Jupiter has been doing a great job there, right? And now the dignity is even going to improve, right? With joining its sign here in Sagittarius, which connects to the more material well-being. So a new moon, so there's a lot of new beginnings, right? Jupiter's transit, then a new moon the day before, and then on the 6th of November, so 2 days before Jupiter's transit, the nodes are shifting signs. Rahu is going to be in Cancer, Ketu is going to be in Capricorn, right? So the eclipses are going to happen there in the next 18 months. So the house that is under stress for Scorpio ascendant is their third house, right? Here we have a Saturn in Capricorn in good dignity, right? It's a manifesting influence as well. This is also applying Gemini's second source of strength. we have Saturn coming closer to its conjunction with Pluto. Pluto is, of course, the ego basher, right? Whenever your ego wanders off too far, then our planet's job is to realign that ego with what the soul actually wants to create in this lifetime, right? Now, of course, we have the South Node also entering that combo here, which is, or joining that combo, which is going to spice things or it's going to create more tension. The now South Node of the Moon wants to create completions, okay? Ketu is where we have created a security paradigm where we're looking for perfection, where we hold on to things. It's the most narrow planet, can be overly controlling. It's also a spiritualizing factor if you let go of things that, if you look at things realistically. So Ketu is where we fall back on. It gives us a feeling of security, but in fact, it leaves us dissatisfied, because the point is, in order to develop our consciousness, we have to go into what Rahu represents. Rahu is a confusing influence, and its tactics is to, give us something, right? Creates a certain unconscious, subconscious need within us, and then to put us out of our comfort zone, right? To evolve our consciousness. So we're going after that thing, but often it disappoints us because what that thing exactly is not able to support us, not able to fulfill us truly. But it is the way to go. It is the way how we evolve our consciousness. Okay, so for Scorpio Ascendant, this is happening in their 9th house, which is a Dharma house. Okay, the 9th connects to foreign travel. Rahu is a foreign indicator. Cancer is, of course, the sign of foreign places. So there's a strong foreign influence here. And this is the way to go. The 9th house relates to higher learning. It's the house of marriage as well, teachers, gurus, and so on. So this is the way to go for Scorpio Ascendant, right? Because there's a lot of stress in the 3rd house. So the 3rd house is technical skills, developing technical skills, right? It's good to have a malefic like Saturn in the 3rd house, like for Scorpio. You want malefics, cruel planets in difficult places, and the 3rd house is one of the upachaya houses, which is grow over time. So it's good to put a lot of hard work in it. So it's kind of good, especially with Saturn in its good dignity, to have it there. So it's going to create good results, developing your skills, applying your will, courage, and so on. Restraint, right? Saturn is always restrained to develop what is deep within you, right? And then in the 5th house, you express that in some creative endeavor. Okay, Pluto is here too, so concepts that are not authentic, things that you think about, whatever that 3rd house may hold, in terms of your rationale. Also, the 3rd house is strongly connected to your rational mind. Are being scattered, right? Slowly but surely. And Pluto is indicating that. The South Node is going to create some completions here. So not holding on to what is, especially Ketu in the 3rd house, and because the 3rd house is also has this rational mind connotation, trying to control things, trying to understand things. The 9th house is your belief system. So Scorpio shows, or Rahu in Cancer shows for Scorpio a need to develop their belief system, right? Their belief systems are in need of development, is a way to put it. And of course, Cancer is a Brahmin sign, a Sattvic sign, which deals with knowledge and understanding and the true essence, right? What is your life path? What is your dharma? What is your natural inclination? Very strongly very strongly indicate or becoming active for a Scorpio Ascendant. Jupiter has been blessing Scorpio, right? Jupiter has been aspecting their 9th house as well. So has been a lot of growth, even though sometimes Jupiter transits can be difficult, right? I mean, because of other indications in the horoscope. But Jupiter is always that, gives always wisdom, gives always protection, life. One of the names is Jiva. So even if you haven't really felt it on a conscious level, has been a lot of protection. There's also, during this new moon, there's a nice trine from Neptune, which I forgot to tell. So which is a spiritualizing influence always, right? Neptune can create some longings. But here there's a nice trine with this Sattvic sun, which always sheds a light here on the life path, which is the 1st house, and the body can also, be in terms of health, right? So taking care of your health, or doing something in respect to your health, which is important. You need your body to in good shape to go about the path, right? So a nice spiritualizing influence here, and Rahu showing a need for balancing out their belief systems, right? Letting go of what you cannot control, definitely, especially on a level of rationale. And of course, all these other third house connotations. The third house also connects to short distance travel, people that work for you, commerce, right? Performing arts, dancers, and so on. So learning a new thing. That's why it's, you know, technical skills, right? It's upadesa, which means like learning new language and this kind of thing. So it's happening in a sign as Capricorn. Capricorn is the original 10th sign of the zodiac, which always connects to, you know, status, career, authority figures, institutions. You know, Saturn has that. It's ruled by excuse me, Capricorn has that. It's ruled by Saturn, which is the Lord here, which is doing a good job for a Capricorn, right? So it's gonna give good results. This is a stressful situation, right? These three malefics here, so it gives a lot of promise. When there's a lot of pressure, it always gives a lot of promise. And here, Jupiter is going to protect that second house of Artha. So see, there's always stuff going on. You have always malefic planets. There's also cruel planets. The dignities change. Things are constantly moving, but we have a nice, very, very strong Jupiter. You know, in Mula Trikona is one of the greatest, it's the second greatest dignity a planet can be in. So it's going to give a lot here. And it's also connecting to self-worth. The second house is self-worth, right? So, so it's going to be empowering. And again, the Artha is so important in life on Earth, right? So after a year of diving deep, becoming more psychologically and emotionally mature because of Jupiter's transit through Capricorn, Capricorn can now focus a little more on, okay, how can I improve my self-worth, my life situation, and my family life. The second house is, you know, also your family life, and so on. Okay. Okay, that's enough for Scorpio Ascendant. Take care and talk to you next year. Bye. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you. And now for Sagittarius Ascendant. For Sagittarius, Jupiter will be transiting their first house, which is good news, right? We have Jupiter, the manifesting sattvic Brahmin, right? Sattva is your true nature, doing things because of who you truly are. The Brahmins are all about knowledge and understanding, and pouring wisdom and joy into the Rashi or the sign, right? Jupiter is all about that. It's entering its Mula Trikona within the first 10 degrees where it draws its strength from, right? Which is the second highest dignity a planet can be in. And then later on, when it passes that 10th degree, it's going to be in its own sign, performing really well. So it's going to bless Sagittarius, Sagittarius's life path, right? So the first house is an angle and a trine, right? It's the only house that has both qualities. An angle connects to action, and the trine connects to dharma, following your inspirations. So it's a very powerful point. They're going to be fueled with creative energy, right? So fueled with positive creative energy. Jupiter is that highly creative force, and Sagittarius is going to feel that. Sagittarius is a masculine sign, a male sign, so it wants to act on it. It's a Kshatriya sign, a warrior sign, so it's going to shoot its arrow, and it will have long-term ramifications. So there's a great opportunity for Sagittarius Ascendant to actually realign more than any other sign with what the soul is here to do, right? To heal. Jupiter is, of course, always a healing instrument. It gives that eagle's eye perspective. It creates understanding in respect to your life path, in respect to things of the past, for example. You know, it's a time of healing, of bringing understanding to who you truly are, what you are here to do. So, okay, this is the first house. The first house is Swa Dharma. Swa means self, and Dharma is nature, following your natural self. Okay, so it's a great transit. Now, Jupiter will be Rashi aspecting all dual signs. Okay, that's what it does, applying Gemini's second source of strength, right? So it's going to be for Sagittarius, it's important because it's all cardinal points. So the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th house are going to be under manifesting influence of Jupiter and also of Mercury, right? Especially in the first couple of weeks, Mercury the 2nd manifesting Graha. And whenever Mercury manifests, whenever Mercury transits these dual signs, right, Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo, there will be 2 manifesting grahas onto these signs, which means that whatever is within these signs will come to fruition. Okay, so these signs, of course, are going to be houses in your horoscope, and here's the first. It's all foundational points of the chart: the 1st, 4th, 10th, and 7th and 10th house, right? Which is the Swadharma, the path you're on. The 4th is your wealth, your home, right? Your internal peace, peace of mind. The 7th, your spouse. Can relate to foreign countries as well. And the 10th is your occupation. So all these things are under great manifesting influence. You can expect things to grow there in the coming year for sure. Okay. So that is good. Now, the day before Jupiter transit Sagittarius, we're going to have a new moon in Scorpio. Scorpio is the 12th house for Sagittarius. Jupiter has been transiting for a year their 12th house, which is a spiritual combination. And when I say spiritual, it means the 12th is where you surrender to something higher. You just sacrifice. It can connect to sacrifice in things as well, but the 12th house connects to Pisces, which is the original 12th sign of the zodiac, which is all about surrendering what you can't control. Jupiter would bless that. Okay, so of course was happening in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is, of course, always showing where we need to develop on a psychological and emotional level. Scorpio wants security on those levels. So we had Jupiter there blessing the whole year. Blessing Scorpio for the whole year, becoming psychologically healthier, right? A deep diving. It could, shed a lot of light, even when things got difficult on an emotional level, on a psychological level. Jupiter there would have, gave blessings and give support, no matter how tough it could have been, right? Now the new moon is going to be there. So this is nice. It's going to be the day before Jupiter actually transits, so Jupiter still is going to be there. So we're going to have the 3 Sattvic planets there. So there's a new beginning in respect to, again, to taking a deeper look at what is going on in terms of your psychology, in terms of your emotions, right? Which is Scorpio. Scorpio is also taboo. It's one of the hidden houses. The 12th house is one of the moksha houses, right? So where you contemplate, where you research, where you meditate, right? The 12 relates to ashrams and so on, hidden places, isolated places. It can also connect to hospitals and prisons and so on. So everything that is beyond. Also working on your, like dreams, working on your subconscious more and focusing on that. And we have a nice trine from Neptune, which is always a spiritualizing influence, right? So we have this nice shift going on. So there's a new moon happening the day before Jupiter transits. It's going to transit the 2nd house, which is the 1st house here, which is great. Really emphasizing that life path. We have at the time of the new moon this nice spiritualizing a trine, right? Neptune always wants to create breakthroughs on the level of mind, is trining that nice sattvic sun, right, which always sheds a light here on the subconscious, on what is hidden, and really to move forward, like move on with it, and really align to what is actually important to the person, right here. And it's going to be strongly supported. And at the 2 days before that, the nodes will have shifted signs. So we're going to have Rahu and Ketu shifting from Leo, Aquarius to Cancer and Capricorn. So this is great, and this is new beginnings, right? This is really showing major shift. So for for Sagittarius, the shift happens from their 3rd 10th axis, right? The 3rd 9th axis to their 2nd 8th axis. Okay, so and the sign that is most stressed for Sagittarius is their 2nd house, right? We have Saturn there, luckily in good dignity. And I'm saying luckily because you want malefic planets in good dignity, right? They can, because they're cruel planets, they require a lot of work. When they're in good dignity, they can give good results. And this is also applying Gemini's 2nd source of strength, right? Any planet that conjuncts its own sign becomes manifesting to that sign. Saturn is going to come closer to its conjunction with Pluto. Pluto, of course, connects to Shiva, which is the ego destroyer. Now, the 2nd house is the house of your self-worth, your finances, right? Your resources. It's a reflection of the first house, which is you. So what you need to support yourself on the life path to become aligned, to become firm within your life path, within following your inspiration, within following who you truly are, right? And see, I'm always talking about inspiration. It doesn't mean that you have to be not always the most inspired person, but it means following who you are, right? So most naturally. And so the second house gives a lot of stress there in terms of finances. It would give finances because it's manifesting, but it also creates a lot of stress. Saturn always shows where there's resistance, where there's a lot of work we have to put into. Some psychological vulnerabilities can come up, some clashes within authority, with authority figures, institutions, because it's happening in the sign of Capricorn, right? Pluto has been transiting Capricorn for a long time, but you'll see because Saturn there coming closer, it will be more and more intense, which is a good thing because things that are not authentic about who you are, what you project out there, who you think you are, or what your belief systems are, or something like that, will be bashed by Pluto, right? Which is always trying to realign that ego with the soul, because it's the soul that is really in control, right? So now it's going to be a little more intense because the South Node is entering the sign of Capricorn as well on the 6th of November. So South Node represents completions, endings. The South Node is where we try to control things. It's where we're looking for perfection, but we can't find that perfection. So it leaves us dissatisfied. The South Node can also be a spiritualizing influence, right? If you're willing to let go, if we're willing to let go of the ego, because the outer planets intimately connect to the nodes, this Rahu and Ketu, or the south and the north node of the moon, right? So here it's going to be emphasized, like the South Node really coming up to this Pluto here. So it's going to be intense, and we're going to have this nice malefic combo here. So the second house, right, is under great stress, a lot of potential there at the same time as well because of the great stress, right? So there's a lot of lessons to learn, but also a lot of difficulties and challenges there. It's happening in a sign of Capricorn. The sign is always deeper than the house. So Capricorn, of course, connects to our persona. It's the original 10th sign of the zodiac, our status, how we think we project ourselves out there, right? And how the people see us and this kind of thing. Your occupation, performing our great deeds, and so on. All these things are under review. All these things are being challenged. And there's going to be some completions there, which is a good thing, right? It's where you need to let go. And when you don't let go, it can lead to a nervous breakdown, right? This is what Ketu can represent because it's that most narrow planet. Now, for Sagittarius Ascendant, it's very important to connect to Cancer here, the 8th house, right? So 8th house, Rahu shows where we are in need of development, right? Ketu shows where we have created a security paradigm where we can't find fulfillment. So we have to put the effort in whatever Rahu represents and transits. And here it's for Sagittarius, it's the 8th house. The 8th house relates to intimacy, right? Learning to trust other people. It's going to be a very, Ketu second, Rahu 8 is a challenging position, can be a challenging position. It's a position that can create a lot of change. But if we look at more on a collective level, let's look at the sign. So Rahu is entering the sign of Cancer, right? And it shows Cancer is a movable sign. It's a sattvic sign, which again, it's a Brahman and a sattvic sign. So it contemplates, it's a water rush, which always has that spiritual connotation, creative connotation. Sattva is again that true essence, the true self, right? Rahu shows we are in need of developing a new feeling, something to invest in, that connects to who we are again, right? This is so much about dharma and following natural inspiration, this transit here. And then Rahu showing the 8, which is learning how to trust oneself through surrendering to another, for example, can be happening. Right, the 8th house is the second from the 7th. The 7th is the spouse. The second has a gain connotation, right? The second, the gain from the spouse. So it connects to intimacy, and the 8th house is a hidden house, an occult house. It's also other people's resources, right? It also connects to battles. The 8th house is where we work our ego. So for Rahu, transiting Leo, right, which was their 9th house for Sagittarius, was very much about redefining or your belief systems, learning how to let go of the control of the mind and to surrender to some kind of belief system, right? To believe something that is greater than yourself, we could say. Now it's going to, work further on that, path, and it's going to become more. It's going to intensify it. Okay, it's going to show where do I need to surrender more, because the 8th house also has that connotation. It's where you work the ego, in the sense that whatever psychological sensitivities may come up, Rahu is going to create some. It's going to point where you need to put the energy, where you need to put the focus, right? And because we're kind of refuse that, or we are afraid to go into whatever Rahu represents, because Rahu can create these compulsive needs, because it wants to bring us out of our comfort zone to evolve our consciousness. Okay, so and here we have the 2nd house of self-worth, intimacy, and really trusting the world, right? Because it's trusting someone else is also, it has to do with your own trust. Do you trust yourself, for example? There's a great psychological process going on for Sagittarius, right? We had Jupiter in their 12th house. We have now Rahu in their 8th house, all moksha houses. So there's a lot of transformation going on. The new moon here in Scorpio, but Jupiter here is that light point, right? This is the great shift here. It's going to empower whatever is necessary, whatever holds you back of really going for it. And it can relate to trust issues. It can relate to whatever it may be. The 8th house also connects to corporations, for example. So it can play out on so many levels. Jupiter is going to support that whatever difficulties may arise, right? Because it is entering that foundational point, that 1st house, which is dharma and action, right? Angle and trine. So good. Now, during this new moon, there's going to be, yes, I think I mentioned the nice trine from Neptune, which is a spiritualizing influence. Now, Venus is still in the 11th house in its own sign, retrograde. Venus is, of course, an indicator, a significator of relationships and love. So there could be some revising, right? Or a partner can come in from the past, something like that. But it's going to give good results in its own sign here. Right, so I think that's probably enough for Sagittarius Ascendant. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you. And now for Capricorn Ascendant. For Capricorn, Jupiter will be transiting their 12th house. What is the 12th house? The 12th house is the house of losses and expenses. It's one of the moksha houses. Moksha means liberation. It's where we get away from the troubles of the world. That's why it connects to isolated places like ashrams, hospitals, prisons, places of research. Okay, it connects to your subconscious mind, in places of imagination, right? The 12th house. So Jupiter, a manifesting influence, is going to protect expenses and losses. The 12th house, is, of course, connects to the original 12th sign of the zodiac, which is Pisces, and Pisces is all about surrender, right? It has, in that sense, also a spiritual connotation, because the original 12th sign is ruled by Jupiter. So Jupiter in the 12th house is a spiritual placement. Spiritual, in a sense, contemplating, right, as a moksha, entering a moksha sign or a moksha house, contemplation. Retirement is also the 12th house. It's also a place of long-term investments, right? So all these things are under manifesting influence. Now, Jupiter will be also Rashi aspecting all the dual signs. So for the whole year, it will be manifesting Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo as well. For Capricorn Ascendant, that is the 3rd house, right? The 6th house and the 9th house. So third house affairs, you know, developing your skills. The sixth house in terms of your health, becoming more intelligent, right? Sixth house is a house of intelligence. And the ninth, which of course is a house, one of the strongest of the Dharma houses, are going to be under influence of Jupiter as well. So things will come to fruition there on a concrete and material level. We also see that Mercury is there at the beginning of Jupiter transiting Sagittarius. Mercury is, of course, the second manifesting graha according to Gemini, right? So whenever Mercury transits the dual signs, right, the third, sixth, and ninth house for Capricorn, there will be two manifesting grahas onto these houses. So things will definitely during those times come to fruition, right? So you can check out, it's going to be about 4 months here, right, whenever Mercury transits one of these dual signs. So you can follow this as the year goes by, okay? So this is good news for Capricorn Ascendant. So taking care of your, you know, investments, also taking time off, right? Jupiter is going to give that because the 12 also connects to vacations, taking time off, contemplate all moksha things, right? This is connected to, you know, finding out who you are again, which is you know, Sagittarius is that Kshatriya warrior sign, right? It's an action sign. It's a fire sign. Fire is always connected to self and intuition, right? Fire always rises high, right? So it connects to what you want to express, right? Symbolized by a man on a horse with a bow who shoots his arrow, which has long-term ramifications, right? So in that sense, also long-term investments and so on. So it's a very good year opportunity for you to take care of all these things that I just mentioned, right? It's going to be manifested there. Okay, so now that's not all, of course. The day before that, we're going to have a new moon in their 11th house in the sign of Scorpio here, right? So there's going to be a new moon in the 11th house, and the 11th house for Capricorn is whatever. The 11th house is what you desire on a material level, on a worldly level. Parasha gives it that acquisition of various objects. So you know, the love you receive from the world, right? This is the 11th house, what you crave for. It's a house of gains. So it's the money that comes in before it gets taxed. So people who are self-employed and this kind of thing, new beginnings in respect to that. The day before Jupiter's transit here, it's going to be still in Scorpio. So we're going to have the three sattvic planets, Sun, Moon, and Jupiter in that sign, highlighting that sign. Of course, Scorpio is always connected to transformation, right? Psychological, emotional transformation, being a water sign, being a fixed sign. So it always wants material security, right? So for Capricorn here, the 11th house is a house of gains, of course. So there's new beginnings there and some good support, right? So there's going to be a waxing phase of the moon. So you can build on things during this cycle, during this 2-week cycle, right? There's going to be a full moon happening there a couple of weeks later. So this is happening for the 11th house. The 11th is an Upachaya house. So one of the strongest, it is the strongest growing house, right? It's a Kama house. It deals with our desires. So again, what you desire on a worldly level, right? So Jupiter has been blessing in the last year, this house, this domain for Capricorn Ascendant. So what is your desire? What you want to feel remembered by, or what you want to express, what you want to enjoy in the world, which is starting connected to the 11th house. Also, it connects to larger social networks, right? Again, that connects with receiving love from the world, so connection and so on. So, but it's a strongly material house, right? The 11th house. So that is what's happening as well. Now, the stress, the most stressful sign for Capricorn is, of course, their first house, right? We have Saturn, the cruel planet, the malefic planet. We have Jupiter, Pluto has been transiting Capricorn for a number of years. And now, 2 days before Jupiter's transit, on the 6th of November, the South Node is going to enter the Capricorn here. So the South and North Node are shifting signs, I mean, from Leo, Aquarius to Cancer, Capricorn, right? So this is important. So Ketu is going to be spiritualizing. It's a spiritualizing influence, all Capricorn signs, but it's a very intense combo, right? Saturn is going to come closer to its conjunction with Pluto. Saturn, of course, always brings up some psychological vulnerabilities. Saturn is the planet of hard work and resistance. It's going to create good results, right, in terms of their body, their life path, because it becomes manifesting to that sign. So Capricorn becomes super hardworking, right, in this 2.5-year transit. It's been transiting there since last year. So really going to give good results, but there's a lot of intensity also, right, because Pluto is there. Pluto, of course, is the ego basher. So whatever concepts you have about yourself that are not authentic, that are not true, that Pluto is going to bash that. And of course, these intensities or these sensitivities and the intensity is going to be growing because Saturn is coming closer to its conjunction with Pluto. And we're going to have the South Node, which represents completions, right? So Ketu is where we have created a security paradigm. It's where we have to let go, right? Ketu is that narrow planet that, you know, always looks for perfection, that shows where we have to let go. Things can become too fixed there, too narrow. And the Rahu shows where we need to develop, right? Where an individual is in need of development. This is connected to their 7th house, right? The 7th here connects to Cancer, which is, of course, foreign countries. The 7th house is foreign countries. Rahu there as a foreign indicator. So there's a lot of potential for Capricorn Ascendant to move abroad, for example. This is one of the indications. But also, of course, the 7th is relationships, right? So very much changes and growth in respect to relationships. So the South Node here, spiritualizing influence. So who, you know, because the first house is the, you know, is the path that you're on. Okay, so there could be some confusion there. Ketu is that eclipse point. It hides things, right? One of the names of Ketu is mist. So what is my path, right? Who am I? It can also create some, you know, challenge in respect to your health, for example. So it's a good thing to take care of your, you know, regimes, or you do kind of retreats or something like that to improve your health. Excuse me. But Rahu here indicates a need to develop relationships, to create win-win situations with people, because the 7 is also, you know, trade, of course, right? So here we have Jupiter in the 12th house, which shows a little more off time, we could say, because Capricorn has been so hard working, right? It has been working because of Saturn coming in there, manifesting it. Pluto there because a lot of intensity. Now the South Node shows some completions here. So things that are not longer suiting you on your life path, Ketu in the next 18 months will, you know, help complete those things, right? Pluto is always bringing more authenticity. So if the ego is a little wandering off a little too far and too long, then the job of the other planets and Pluto, right, is destroying that you know, falseness of it, okay, and to realign the ego with what the soul actually wants to create. And of course, if you're able to let go, and this is supported, right, the 12th house is where we let go, where we surrender, and Jupiter is going to support that, then in terms of your life path, it's going to be much easier, right? It's going to be much clearer where to go, even though a lot of hard work is indicated, right? South Node is a spiritualizing influence, so that's the reward, right? So Ketu is that narrow planet, so it can create nervous breakdown because it is the most narrow. When our vision gets too narrow and it's not truthful to who we are, right, then it's going to create a breakdown. So Jupiter is going to support this here to facilitate that process, right, to help let go whatever we need to let go of, to realign with who we truly are, right, which is always the case here with Jupiter in the 12th house. And then it's going to be much easier for this tensity here to release and to move forward with, right? And Rahu is the way to go. So Rahu is also in the sign of Cancer. Cancer is, of course, a Brahmin sign, right? It's a movable sign. Cancer in Rahu in Cancer shows where that we need to, this is happening on a collective level, right? Invest in a new feeling, in something truthful, right? The 4th relates to what we need to feel nourished on an emotional level. Rahu there can create some confusion. Rahu in any water sign can create a lot of emotional turmoil, right? But it is the way. Rahu wants to trick us out of our comfort zone to evolve our consciousness, okay? Ketu here, of course, is in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn connects to the original, well, it's the original 10th sign of the zodiac, so it connects to status, your persona, right? persona is what, you project out there, right? What you want people to, see, and so on. So of course, also authority figures, institutions, and this kind of thing. So this can play out on, an external level, but also within you, right? Within your own authority structure, or your own, need for status and this kind of thing. So this is all under review, or maybe you're working too hard, for example, or where do you have to let go, right? Ketu shows here some completion, some endings. And Rahu shows, okay, constructive relationships with other people. This is the way to go, investing in what you feel, right? What you feel connected to support you on the life path. And of course, Jupiter here is going to be a nice protecting influence, protecting expenses, protecting, and also give you the power, the insight to contemplate, right? When you contemplate, when you meditate, you will gain a lot. See, that's what Jupiter's promise here in Sagittarius does. Because it's also a fire sign, so it will give you that inspiration and to have a clear understanding of what you actually need to change or take care of, here indicated by all these planets in your first house, which is you, right? Which is you on the path, okay? All right, so we have still Venus in Libra here, manifesting Libra, right? Which is, what is it here, the 10th house for Capricorn. So this is also in terms of your career. Of course, Venus is, and your occupation, right? The 10th house is the Karma Bhava, where you perform your great deeds. Venus is retrograde. Retrograde planets are always stronger. They can give more. Venus is also a significant for relationships, right? So retrograde can, maybe a new partner comes in, or an old partner, right? An ex-partner comes in, or something in respect to relationships that needs revising, right? It can play out like that. I'm just giving an example. Also in terms of your self-worth, right? Venus is your self-worth, creating win-win situations, right? We have this Rahu here entering your 7th house, Venus retrograde, so it has this connotation, okay? All right, so this is some information. Good luck, and talk to you next year. Bye. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you. And now for Aquarius ascendants. For Aquarius, Jupiter will be transiting their 11th house. Now, what is the 11th house? Everything that you desire on a worldly and material level. Parashara gives it as acquisition of various objects, right? So it's a house of gains. The money that comes in before it gets taxed. If you're self-employed, you can expect things to come to fruition there. You know, the 11th house is the love you receive from the world, right? It relates to larger social networks. If you have a public, you can expect your public to increase, right? Jupiter is gonna enter its Mula Trikona there, which is its second highest dignity between the first 10 degrees of Sagittarius. So this is good news. Now, via Rashi aspect, Jupiter will be manifesting all dual signs in, for the whole year. So it means, for the coming year, right? It's going to be a whole year of transit. And the dual signs are Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo, right? So these placements will come to fruition as well for Aquarius ascendant. That's their 2nd house, their 5th house, and their 8th house, okay? The 11th has, as I mentioned, that a connotation. It's a finance house. The 2nd house is, of course, your resources, right? It's one of the Artha houses, which deals with your finances as well, which will be under manifesting influence. Then you have the 5th house of creativity, right? And you have the 8th house, which also has a finance connotation. So it's going to be a good year, good growth in terms of finances, in terms of what you desire on a material, worldly level, right? This is what the 11th house is. The 11th is also to receiving titles, right? Again, recognition. It's also rules domesticated animals, right? All sorts of gains, in fact. Okay. The 11th house is the strongest of the Upachaya houses. Upachaya means growing, right? So it gives more the older you get. So people with their ascendant lord, for example, in the 11th house, the older they get, the more they receive, okay, on that level, on that material level. So that's a good influence. Now, it's not all, because Mercury is going to be there at the time Jupiter transits Sagittarius. Mercury is, according to Gemini, the second manifesting graha. So we're going to have two manifesting influences for about 4 times a year, right? 4 months a year, onto all these signs, right? So you can expect these things really to grow and to manifest for you, okay? Of course, we're going to have to look at dashas as well, which are planetary periods, which show the promise of things, right? So this is like the transits are looking at things with a magnifying glass to see when things actually going to play out, right? So, but this is what is happening, all right? For Aquarius, excuse me, for yes, Aquarius ascendant. Now, it's not all. The day before, we're going to have a new moon in the sign of Scorpio, which is the 10th house for Aquarius ascendant, right? The 10th house is the karma bhava. Karma means action, bhava means house, where you perform your great deeds. It connects to your occupation, your responsibilities as well, okay, your status, and so on. Authority figures is the 10th house. So most importantly, it's the house where you, of your occupation, where you perform your great deeds. So new beginnings in respect to that. The day before, Jupiter will still be in Scorpio there. So we're going to have the 3 sattvic planets highlighting this Scorpio here. Of course, Scorpio as a sign, right? The sign always goes deeper than the house. And the house is kind of a gateway to the sign. So it has always that undertone. The sign always conditions you know, it's a conditioning factor. So for Scorpio, Scorpio represents transformation always, right? It's the original 8th sign of the zodiac, which is all about becoming psychologically and emotionally secure, right? And of course, the 10th house is also an Artha house. So we have a lot of Artha material stuff going on, right, at the time of the transits. And I'm looking at this as a snapshot, right, for the whole year. Let's say, of course, things are going to move, but we're going to have Jupiter for a whole year there. Saturn is already transiting Capricorn. It's going to be for about 2.5 years. And then we have also the nodal shift, right? The nodal axis shifts is going to shift sign 2 days before. So on the 6th of November, Rahu and Ketu are shifting from Leo Aquarius to Capricorn Cancer, which is important. So there's a lot of new beginnings. We have a new moon, we have a Jupiter transiting at great dignity sign, and then we also have the nodal shift here. So now if we look at the planet that is, or the sign that is most stressed for Aquarius is the 12th house here, right? It's Capricorn. We have Saturn, the Lord of Capricorn, manifesting Capricorn, right? This is also applying Gemini's second source of strength. So there's a lot of hard work in respect to, you know, losses and expenses, right? So see, Saturn is always the planet of our vulnerabilities, right? Our psychological complexes. It's the planet that makes us work hard for things, okay? And in its own sign, it becomes manifesting. So dealing with expenses, losses, which is the 12th house, is manifested there. But we have Pluto there. Pluto has been there for a long time, you know, adding to the intensity. Pluto is the ego basher. So whatever you need to let go of, and you can't let go of, when the Jupiter transits any sign or conjuncts your planet, is going to force you to actually do that, right? You can look at it like, you know, when the ego wanders off too long, too far, right? And the soul is not really aligned. It's not really working together with what the soul actually wants to create, wants to manifest. Then the goal or the job of the outer planets is to realign that soul, right? To realign the ego with the soul, because it's the soul that is in control, right? So, and of course, the south node is will be, you know, will have entered that combo, that sign as well, coming closer to this conjunction here, right? So the closer Saturn gets to Pluto, the more intense these things will become. So this is going to play out in terms of losses and expenses. 12 relates to long-term investments. Also, letting go, right? The 12th house is always where we need to surrender, right? It's a hidden house, a moksha house, a time of a house of contemplation. So it can work on your subconscious mind, for example, right? So Ketu is, of course, also a spiritualizing influence. Ketu is where we are overly controlling things, where we suppress life energy, where we want things a certain way, but it's not really fulfilling us. It leaves us with a feeling of dissatisfaction, okay? Because it is the north node that points where we need to develop, where the individual is in need of development. Now, on a collective level, Rahu is going to enter Cancer, right? So Cancer is a movable sign, a movable water sign. Water always relates to, contemplation, emotions, what you feel, what is important to feel nourished, okay? So on a collective level, this is going to be very important to invest in a new feeling, a new emotion, something that connects with who you truly are, because Cancer is a Brahman, is a Sattvic sign, right, which deals with the true nature of our being. It has that connotation. It's also a Brahmin, which wants to understand things, wants to contemplate, and so on. So this is an important shift, and an important move from the 12th, from the 1st to 7th axis, which Rahu and Ketu have been transiting for the last 18 months, to the 12th, 6th axis. Okay, the 6th house, of course, for Aquarius Ascendant is the house of enemies, improving on your health, right? Dealing with problems, daily problems. The 6th house is one of the houses of intelligence, tackling the problems of the world, right? Your daily activity can, in that sense, also connect to your job or something like that. So this is the way to go, to take care of that material, because the 6th house is an Artha, material house, to care of that dimension as well. But there's a lot of support, right, because of Jupiter's transit and its Rashi aspects to all these finance houses. So I think it's quite a good position here, considering all planets, and especially Jupiter's transit here through Sagittarius, to support in all of that. Yes. Okay, so there's going to be a nice trine at the time of the new moon, right? From Neptune to the Sun. Neptune is, of course, always a spiritualizing influence. It can create longings. But here it's a trine, and trine is the most harmonious aspect. Neptune wants to create breakthroughs on the level of mind also, and this is here connected to Scorpio, of course, where the Sun is. Scorpio again relates to transformation, right? The 8, taboo and this kind of thing. So it's kind of a spiritual influence at the time of the transit here, and of course Jupiter is has a strong has that connotation as well, right, in the sign of Sagittarius. So it's a favorable transit. The most challenged placement here is the 12th house. Pluto has been there for a long time. Saturn can create things, it gives things, it can cope with expenses and this kind of thing. It can give even vacations, right, because it's manifesting to that sign. But it's always going to bring up some vulnerabilities in respect to your subconscious, which is the 12th house, the things that you can't really see there. It's one of the hidden houses. Okay, so like in, for example, meditation, because Ketu in the 12th house is a good placement to go deep within, right? And with Pluto here, these are very powerful planets. The outer planets really work, are transpersonal planets. They really work on your subconscious, the subconscious part of your being. And then Saturn, of course, representing vulnerabilities, psychological vulnerabilities. So there's a lot to get out of this house here, of this 12th house, and to dive into, and to also understand that, and as an axis, as a balance, to create balance, go into that 6th house as well. All right, take care of your enemies, and you're always your own worst enemy, right? So take care of that, your daily responsibilities, and to connect that also with something truthful, right, which is Cancer, with what you need to feel nourished also. So we also have Venus still in the sign of Libra, manifesting Libra as well. So there's a lot of manifesting potential at that time, right? It's the retrograde. Retrograde planets are always closer to the Earth and can give more. On a psychological level, it can create some confusion. There's a nice trine here between Mars and Venus. Mars is, of course, your hunger. Your Mars rules whatever is, wants to exert whatever is within your consciousness. It's still here on the 1st house, which is the Dharma path, the path of Dharma. Okay, so energizing here Aquarius. And of course, Venus is a soothing aspect, right? So it's this trine, Mars-Venus trine is a nice, juicy aspect, okay? So in fulfilling your desires as well, right? Venus, of course, connects to that. Venus is also the Karaka, the significator of relationships. So retrograde can mean that a relationship from the past can come in, or some resolution in respect to relationships and love and so on. Venus is also your self-worth, right? Which is here in the 9th house in its own sign, which is good. So it's a good transit at that time. So importantly, the 11th house, Jupiter is going to be very strong there, manifesting gains for you, more recognition, validation. And so enjoy that, okay? Talk to you next year. Bye. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you. And now for Pisces Ascendant. For Pisces, Jupiter will be transiting their 10th house. Now, what is the 10th house? The 10th house is Karma Bhava. Karma means action, Bhava means house. It's the house where we perform our great deeds, okay? It's the house that is above. So it's the most visible. It connects with our career, right? With our status, with the father, right? Authority figures. It's one of the Artha houses, which deals with our material well-being. But most importantly, it's where you perform your great deeds. So Jupiter, a manifesting planet, a Sattvic Brahmin. Sattva deals with our true nature. The Brahmins are all about contemplation, getting knowledge and understanding out of the Rashi, right? So Jupiter is going to manifest that. Whatever you're doing, it's going to be more visible. You're going to come more into alignment with who you truly are and you want to express. So we express that by our karmas, right? By choosing the right action. This is the 10th house. Of course, Jupiter, that highly creative force, wants to protect, right? One of the names of Jupiter is Jiva, which is enlivening. It protects these things. It manifests. It wants to grow these things carefully, right? So it's happening in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a fire sign, which always connects to self-expression and intuition, right? All fire signs have intuition. Fire, also leadership qualities, right? Good 10th houses, good leadership positions, and so on, which is the 10th house. All right, so now, Jupiter is going to Rashi aspect all cardinal points. So this is a nice transit because via Rashi aspect, okay, all the dual signs will be under the manifesting influence of Jupiter for the whole year of 2019. And that for Pisces is, of course, the 1st house, Pisces, the 4th house, Gemini, and the 7th house, Virgo, and the 10th house, Sagittarius. So Jupiter is going to pour its influence there as well. So all these things will come have nice manifesting potential in the whole year, okay? Now, you also see at the beginning of the transit, Mercury is there as well. So according to Gemini, Mercury is the 2nd manifesting graha, okay? So Mercury is going to go retrograde the week after, then it's going to transit the sign of Sagittarius. So we're going to have a couple of weeks of 2 manifesting grahas, according to Gemini, manifesting Sagittarius, and all via Rashi aspect, all the cardinal points, right? These are the cardinal foundational points. They anchor our lives, right? So this is very favorable, right, for all the dual signs, and so also for Pisces. So whenever Mercury transits the dual signs in the year, right, it's going to be about 4 months a year or something, there's going to be 2 manifesting forces onto all these signs. So you can expect things to come to fruition there, okay? All right, so having said that, it's the day before we have a new moon happening. This is going to happen in the sign of Scorpio, which is the 9th house for Pisces Ascendant, right? New moon, new beginnings, right? The new moon is always new beginnings. It's the beginning of the waxing phase of the moon, which is a growing phase, right? You can build on things during that time, right? It's the time to put things into concrete action also, okay? So the 9th house is your belief systems, right? It rules religious law, but actually it rules all law, right? That's why it rules the institution of marriage. Teachers, gurus, higher learning, right? Is the 9th house. It's the strongest of the Dharma houses. Again, you're following your natural inspiration. Of course, we have all this Sattvic influence. The sun and the moon, the 2 luminaries, are 2 Sattvic planets. Again, because the sun is the Atma, the moon is the mind, right? So these deal with the true nature, our true selves. Of course, Jupiter is going to be there at the time of the new moon, which is the day before, still in the sign of Scorpio. So we're going to have the 3 Sattvic planets into the 9th house for a Pisces ascendant. So this is a nice, strong time for new beginnings in terms of your belief systems and all the things that I've mentioned. So you're going to have some insight there. The sun always sheds a light. It's in the sign of Scorpio, which is always connected to transformation, right? Scorpio is always about diving deep, becoming psychologically and emotionally secure, because it's a fixed sign. It wants that. It's always wants that. It can hold on to things. We have a very nice spiritualizing aspect from Neptune, right? The sun is trining Neptune. Neptune wants to create breakthroughs on the level of mind. It's always a spiritualizing potential, because it's a trine, right? Trines are the most harmonious aspects. So it's going to enliven that. It's going to fuel that. It's going to create like this spiritual awareness in respect to perhaps psychological and emotional affairs connected to the 9th house, which is your dharma. So there's a lot of support to follow and to realign with what you actually want to express in this life. So Jupiter's transit through your 10th house is a promise of and a potential of actually reaping some rewards and the fruits coming to realization, okay? The work you have been doing. And so Jupiter there in great dignity, and again with Mercury there for these couple of times a year is going to be manifesting. So that's really good. Now, the stress for Pisces ascendant lies in their 11th house, right? We have Saturn there manifesting Capricorn, because the Lord of any sign conjuncting its sign gives it manifesting potential. But Saturn is, of course, a cruel planet, right? It's one of the malefic planets. It shows our psychological sensitivities, where we have to put the hard work, right? So Saturn always gets involved when there's a problem, when there's an inner lack, right? That's why it connects to our, in that sense, sensitivity, psychological sensitivities, weaknesses. And we also have Saturn coming closer to its conjunction with Pluto. Pluto, of course, connects to Shiva, which is the ego destroyer, right? So whenever you're not authentic with whenever inauthenticity sticks to you, we could say, then Pluto's job is to shatter that, okay? To free you from things that are not longer serving you on the path of your soul, because sometimes the ego can wander off too long, right? And create problems. And the job of the outer planets is to realign the ego with the soul, right? Because it's the soul that wants to create. It's the soul that is actually in control. Okay, so that's why Pluto can be a painful thing, because the ego, the only thing the ego wants to do is survive, right, and get its needs met in every moment. So Pluto is gonna, make sure that it doesn't overshadow what the soul is actually wanting to express. Okay, it's going to be even more intense because we're going to have a nodal axis shift, right? K2, the south node, is going to join this intense combo here. So there's a lot of things going on. We have Jupiter transiting the sign of Sagittarius. We have a new moon, and 2 days before we're going to have a nodal shift, all in the same week, all within 3 days. So it's a great shift, new beginnings, karmic changes, right? Now, the nodes shift from Leo Aquarius to the Cancer Capricorn axis. And for Pisces, that is happening in their 5th, 11th axis, right? As I mentioned, this here, Capricorn 11th house, is under great stress. So what is the 11th house? The 11th house is what you desire on a material and worldly level. It is the recognition that you receive from the love you receive from the world. It's what you crave for on a worldly level, right? It connects to your titles and like that, right? Recognition, receiving titles. Also connects to domesticated animals, because the 11th house is a house of gains, right? What we gain from the world. And so it's one of the Upachaya houses, which grow over time, right? It's in fact the strongest of the Upachaya houses. So it has that strong material, worldly, financial connotation. So what you desire, really, okay? So there has been a lot of things coming up there with Saturn transiting it. It's giving it manifesting potential if you really put in the work, right? This is always the promise of Saturn. Saturn is such a rewarding planet when you put in the work, always, right? It's a cruel planet. It really makes you work for it. But when you really work for something and you get the rewards, and which is indicated by a nice dignity, that gives you, it empowers you, right? It gives you a good feeling as well. So don't fear Saturn. But Saturn is going to, when there's a problem, an inner lack, when you feel inner lack, it's going to create problems, right? Because it won't let it go, right? Especially with becoming, again, closer to this conjunction with Pluto here, and then the South Node, which indicates completions, right? The South Node is where we suppress life energies, where we overly control things. It's where our vision, our perception is too narrow. And that is the reason why we have to go into whatever Rahu represents, because Rahu shows where an individual is in need of development. And this is connected here to the 5th house. The 5th house is the house of creativity. Pisces needs to develop their creativity for themselves in the first place, right? And then this 11th axis of getting the recognition will point itself out. It will release itself, okay? It will distress in respect to these things, because whenever you see this highly pressured sign, by all these tension, these planets that create tension, there's a lot of promise there. But the way to go about it is to go into what Rahu represents. Now, Rahu goes into 5th, creativity. It's one of the Dharma houses as well. Knowledge, consistency, and continuance. Staying true to yourself, staying consistent. Work on your consistency, right? Now, Rahu is going to be entering the sign of Cancer, which the sign, it always goes a little deeper, right? The sign is unconscious. So, and this is of course happening on a collective level as well. So Cancer is a water sign, which has a spiritual connotation, right? And it's water is creative also. It's a Brahmin sign also, and a Sattvic sign as well. Like, what is it here? No, it's not like Sagittarius is a Kshatriya sign, right? But it's a Brahmin sign, a Sattva sign. Sattva again deals with your true nature. So investing in a new feeling, investing in something that is really worthwhile. And this is connected to your creativity. This is what Rahu points to, right? It wants Pisces to develop that. Rahu can always create some fear, some insecurity, some chaos, turmoil, because it wants to push us out of our comfort zone, right? And our comfort zone lies here in this 11th house here in Capricorn, right? Where we hold on. Capricorn is the house of the persona, the 10th house of status, of how people look at us also, right? Being truthful, being also responsible, and this kind of thing, which are all good qualities. But here, and most importantly, the 11th house is the house of validation, right? How you feel validated by the world. And here, Rahu points to the fact that it's important to develop your intuitive skills, your creative skills, right? To express that for who you are, right? Close to who you are. That is the challenge. That is the invitation here. And then there will be recognition again, because Saturn is manifesting Capricorn here, right? So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. And we see that Jupiter, of course, in the 10th house, manifesting that 10th house. So it will, this is a really good time to make progress, right, for Pisces ascendants, with all this cardinal points going on, and with this this nodal axis here, it's going to create certain energetic configuration here, looking at the signs. And of course, this is a general forecast, right? This is what's happening for everyone. And so it's going to play out differently in your personal horoscope. But see, there's going to be a lot of potential to grow in performing your great deeds in alignment with who you truly are, right? All right. Venus is still in the sign of Libra, right, in its own sign, retrograde. Venus is, of course, a significator of relationships and love. It rules women, also diplomacy. It's strong. It's the minister, right? So retrograde means it's closer to the earth. So it can give more on a psychological level. Retrograde can create some confusion, perhaps. But here it's going to give good results because, again, it's also manifesting in its own sign. Perhaps a partner or an ex-partner comes to you, or some resolution in respect to relationships and so on. There's a nice trine between Mars and Venus here. It's happening in the 8th house for Pisces, which is intimacy, right? Venus, the karaka of love. Right, it's happening. It's in its 8th house here, which can contribute to a nice, intimate atmosphere with your partner or with people, like going deep, the eighth house in respect to relationships, Libra, and so on. So nice trine with Mars here, Mars representing the hunger, right? A nice trine with Venus, always soothing that hunger. So this is good for your sex life, in fact. This could play out as well. Okay, so this is a snapshot of the time that Jupiter enters this sign here, right? So I thought it was worthwhile really going into it. So good luck to you, and talk to you next year. Bye. Now, if you haven't watched the introduction, I co-authored a book about astrology. You can find it at Lada's website. It's named Astrology Explained, Ancient Principles for the Modern Mind. So if you're interested, go ahead. Thank you.